I'm going to call to order the May 1 Public Works Committee meeting. And may I have a roll call, please?
Commissioners Rothman?
Here.
Bowman? Sapone?
Here.
Brodsky?
Here.
Carswell?
Here.
I believe Commissioner Bowman will be here momentarily. We'll start out with has everyone had a chance to take a look at the meeting minutes? Everything cool? Any questions? So I'll make a motion to approve the committee meeting minutes of March 6, 2019.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes. We don't have minutes, right? Yeah, no. We don't have any presentations in Public Works this evening, no unfinished business. So we're going to move on to something going on over here. We all right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we'll move on to new business. We'll start with PW 01050919. Consider a motion to approve the First Amendment to Commonwealth Financing Authority Grant Number C000065056, extending the termination date to June 30, 2020. And before we consider this, there's someone that can explain it to us, to the public.
We applied, this is for the wastewater sanitary sewer system and the small water and sewer grant.
George, just so that we have it on TV, could you give us your name and title?
George Wrigley, Director, Abington Wastewater
Thank you.
Utilities. This has already been approved back in April 2017, and this amendment just extends it for 1 year to 2020.
Any members of the committee have any questions for Mr. Wrigley? No? Any other members of the board have any questions? No? I forget because we messed it up last time. We're doing public comment at the end of the whole agenda or on individual items, right? Individual items. Okay. Any comments from the public? Hearing none, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? No. All right, the motion passes. Moving along, PW 02050919. Consider a motion to approve change orders number 1 and number 2 to support additional right-of-way for the ADA ramps to be installed at Easton Road and the 2 Rubicam Avenue intersections.
Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you for your time.
Can you just, for the record, provide us your name?
Yes, certainly. Peter Simone. I'm with Simone Collins Landscape Architecture.
Thank you.
And as you may know, we're contracted with the township to do the construction documents for what we refer to as the Abington Tap Trail, which is a mostly on-road trail, some off-road sections that goes a couple of miles through the township, the northern part of the township. This has been a project that's been going on for several years now. Regarding the change order, Mr. Clark asked me to attend this evening, and the change order is for the preparation of right-of-way plans at the intersection of Easton and Rubicam. When we wrote the proposal back in March of 2017, we did not have a survey. It was reasonable to assume that crossing was within the roadway right-of-way. After we got the survey, we found out it was not, and we tried with no success to get PennDOT to allow us to do a right of entry type of easement by the contractor when that construction was being done. Because there are federal funds involved, they cannot do that. So as a result, they've required us through the FWHA process to prepare formalized right-of-way plans for those 4 properties. In addition, we needed additional surveys. So that's the basis of the request.
What's the total number we're looking at on 1 and 2?
The maximum upset would be $11,400. We are hoping that we don't need all the survey information, but we submitted it, which would be a savings of $1,400. And there's a slight chance that we won't need preparation of all the easements for the four corners, but we don't know that yet till the engineer gets into the work. And that's priced per corner.
Okay. Tim, do you have anything that you want to walk us through with
Just
the pretty picture?
yeah, pretty much. You can see the outline where the right-of-way ends for Easton Road, and the ramps do bump out. So that's pretty much what brings us here.
Just explain what exactly is being done as part of it.
With the ramps as they are, do not meet the ADA requirements. So they will be designed, we have to acquire additional right-of-way.
Yeah, the additional work is not for the design of the ramps. That was always part of the project. The additional work is for the right-of-way plans, because again, when we wrote the proposal, we assumed that the roadway and the sidewalk were within the right-of-way. At these corners, it's a question of 2 feet here, 3 feet there, 1.5 feet here. It's very, very tight. So that's the reason that we have to do, really, it's an overkill in terms of what's really needed, but according to federal highway standards, it has to be done because we have federal funding.
Understood. Do either of you have any other comments before we jump to questions from commissioners? Do you have any questions from any committee members before I jump to President Luker? No? President Luker?
Thank you. Is this going to cause any disruption in the surface of the roadway?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you,
Is
sir.
this going to cause any disruption in the service of the existing roadway?
No, it should not.
So it will not require any repaving?
Correct. There may be some minor patching at the curb lines, at the ramps, but there won't be any closing of lanes. The sidewalk might be closed for a few hours while that's happening, but no major, no detours or anything like that.
And now, if I'm not mistaken, isn't one of those the corner where Sussman's Automotive is, and that's grass?
It is the southeast corner.
Yeah.
Right. Is that going to be included in this, or do you just leave that as it is?
That will have the adjustments as well
Okay. Right.
during the construction phase.
So you do put a curb cut for handicap accessibility onto grass?
Correct.
No, sir, I think the intent, my understanding is, and my recollection, and I haven't looked at this in the last few days, is we're going on, the ramps have to go on the sidewalks.
Okay.
So there's going to be a sidewalk connecting on all four corners so that we have good handicap access throughout the intersection.
Okay. Thank you.
Good?
Yep.
Any questions from any other commissioners?
Thank you.
Commissioner Klein?
Yeah. Is there a way that we can get a breakout of the $9,000? Seems a little high for the work that needs to be done here, and I'm not satisfied with the amount of information that was given. Can we get a breakdown from TPD as to why they're
Sure.
coming up with $9,000?
Sure, we can send that to the township. It's probably about 70 hours of work at an average rate, so we can forward that, certainly.
And can we have that work reviewed, that work order, or that scope of work reviewed and also analyzed by somebody else as to see whether that number is a fair number? And the $1,400, I would suggest that that $1,400 is not part of the change order and not be sitting out there that is open to the consultant to use it, and that should be cut from the change order.
Well, Commissioner, the reason we have it in there is because if we have to come back to the township again, that'll further slow the project down. You may be aware that we have a deadline of August, which we have to meet. And so the work under that $1,400 by the surveyor is very specific. We certainly are not going to just eat that money for something else. That would not be honest. And we've worked together for a number of years now. You know that's not how we work. So we would like to leave it in there, but we would only use it if we are required to by PennDOT, because they may need additional survey data that the surveyor will have to go out and get.
Well, be that as it may, then there should be a check and balance. It shouldn't just be sitting out there to be used. If there's some reason for the consultant to believe that that is to be used. So I think if we're not going to take it out of the change order, then it's something that should be put in, that it needs to go through an approval process of either the manager or the engineering department before that money is expended.
I would suggest that if they provide, and when they provide the information prior to next week's meeting, if you move this forward to next week, and for the reasons that Mr. Simone mentioned, we are on a tight timeline, and we would be in jeopardy of not meeting the timeline and losing the grant money if we slow down. I think if we simply make that change order and somehow, depending upon how he submits it, a not to exceed, with final review of any additional dollars being signed off by the township manager and township engineer, I think we could satisfy that.
That would make me feel better. I'd rather not have it in there at all, but that would make me feel better. I don't want it just sitting out there in a change order when it's not necessarily going to be used.
That's fine with us, and again, the reason it's in there is because, based on experience, we think PennDOT may require it, but if you work with PennDOT, you know, depending on the day of the week and the reviewer you get that day, they can give you two different opinions. So
Right.
we're trying to just provide for it in case it's needed.
Yeah, and I would appreciate the breakout from TPD, and I would also appreciate somebody else to look into those numbers. Seems like a lot of money for the amount of work that's being done. Thank you.
I know we have to jump to staff and comments from the public, but I want to ask a question. If we do, we're going to be able to get that information within the next week? Is that a safe assumption?
Couple days.
Okay. So we have the option of passing this on, moving it to next week to be voted on without recommendation from the committee?
Correct.
Okay. So.
Motion would be to move it forward without recommendation.
Are there any comments from staff?
There's only one thing. The dollars for this would be coming out of money set aside from match money.
Okay.
So everyone understands.
Money set aside. Do we have?
There are money set aside in the match monies that would cover this amount of money, yes.
Without jeopardizing the match money for the grant?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions from members of the public or comments? Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. All of you received from me a lack of accommodation. 2 people are obliterated by this screen being here. So this discussion where the commentary was coming from over there was not available to some of us in this room. And this even can go down further, but a different arm is needed. That's number one. Number two, you also can see that there is plenty of room to accommodate the place that does work in the back. This is an absolute disgrace. The process of this meeting is a disgrace.
Thank you for your comments. Manager Manfredi, it looks like you would like to respond? No. Okay. So I'm going to, let's make sure I do this appropriately, but I'm going to make a motion for us to move PW 02050-919 to our full board meeting next Thursday without recommendation, and I so move. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, Tim. We're moving on to PW 03050-919. This is to consider findings and determine next steps resulting from the Ardsley area stormwater study. And I believe we have a few folks who are going to speak to us. First, please identify yourself for those watching this fun committee meeting at home.
My name is Michael Philmeyer with BCM Engineers. We were commissioned to perform this study of the stormwater study of the Ardsley area of the township.
Thank you.
And let me just start this here. Okay, this is a short PowerPoint that we can go through fairly quick. All right, Richard? So we were asked to investigate the stormwater problems in an area of Ardsley, and the boundary is basically from Jenkintown Road to Spear, and from Penn Avenue all the way up to basically the railroad. And of course, the actual drainage is not in a square box. It follows the contours. So the way we do it is we delineated the area into 50 sub-basins and studied each basin. And the total area that was encompassed in this study was 157 acres. So I think correct me if I'm wrong, but the driving force of this study was persistent flooding in the 600 block of Monroe Avenue. And this is right outside of 655 Monroe. This is actually a picture that a homeowner has let us use, or sent to the township, actually, I believe. So real fast, I know this is a very hard slide to see, but it's a topographic area. So railroad, this is Ardsley Burial Park, Jackson, Harrison, Monroe, and this is the problem area. Hamel, Maple, Cricket, Central, Tennis, Garfield, and Penn. So right now there's a storm sewer that starts down at Penn Avenue in the rear of the homes, and it connects to it was a project done by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Resources. It was an Upper Dublin project, I believe, that Abington participated in, at least the connection point. And from there, it's a series of storm pipes that run up between in rights-of-way between people's homes. On some roads, it stays on, but for the most part, it's right-of-way. So what's happening, this pipe is the drain. The park and all these subbasins flow down into this pipe. And also, there's a large section up off of like Elk Avenue and Edge Hill Road, Hazel Avenue, that flow down a 27-inch to Monroe. And all this flow here converges right there, and that's where we find out there's a problem. So let me continue. So this is Monroe Avenue, 655, 649, and there's a 36-inch pipe that comes down. There's an inlet right there, and there's a manhole, and that 36-inch pipe continues. And there's a junction point here that I understand at one point there used to be a manhole that was sealed because the water would come out that inlet and out this manhole. So right now there's no manhole, it's just a spot, and you'll see in the next slide. And from there it flows into a 48-inch pipe that takes it on down.
That's the direction of flow?
I'm sorry?
That's the direction of flow?
Yes, sir.
To the left?
Yep. So this is a 27-inch pipe from on Monroe Avenue from Jenkintown Road, and it drains that area up off near Edge Hill, Hazel Avenue, and Elk. So that comes down, and then local drainage is also channeled in this area. So right now, this is like a whole bunch of pipes in the area, and what happens is at high flows, and it seems to appear mostly at like intense flows, like a thunderstorm, like a summer thunderstorm that just there's so much flow hitting it at once and it backs up. And what we believe is happening is this intersection here, there's an 18-inch coming in from the local inlet, there's a 27 coming in from down Monroe, and there's a 36. It all come there, and the pipes stick into, the side pipes stick in, and it's almost like a dam blocking. So at low flows, there's plenty of area to go through, but at high flows, it will back up. And once that manhole was taken out and sealed a while ago, it just basically push the outlet point back to this inlet here. And just going back real fast, this is the inlet. You can see it bubbling. Okay, so this is what's out there. The green is my weak attempt to show where all the pipes are, but this is the main 36 that runs over and down to the 48s. This is the 27-inch that comes down Monroe, and this is the inlet that goes over there. So it all comes, and you see this patch here. That's where there was, I believe, was a sinkhole, and it was patched up and basically sealed to try to stop the flooding. And the 2 inlets over here that also tie in up here. So down below that pipe, in between Hamel and Monroe, there's this is the 48-inch pipe that was put in a few years ago, and a second 48-inch pipe was put next to it, sort of like a equalization, like additional storage. But these T connections, they wasn't really working. I mean, the main flow's here, or here, I'm not sure which direction I'm looking at here. And I would think during intense form, you're not really getting the full effect of this second pipe. So what we've modeled, this is the existing flow, and see if I can get this to work. This is the water for a 100-year storm flow, and you should see it starts out low as it continues to rain. It pops out right over on the right-hand side there. That's the inlet next to 649 Monroe. And then eventually, this is like an hour time lapse at the peak flow. So this was modeled. So the model does show what is being seen out in the field there. Okay, so what we're proposing for this project is, instead of having it all connected to this one pipe here, to utilize this second 48-inch pipe and connect the Monroe Avenue storm sewer directly to that 48-inch, and then having the 36-inch main trunk sewer continue using the older, well, I don't know if it's older, but the original 48-inch, and then we would put it in a big 12 by 18 concrete box where we would sort of contour with concrete the inside of the box to bring the flow together like smoothly instead of T's. And then downstream of that box is an existing 54-inch pipe, so it gets larger. So what?
The 248s are going into a 54?
Now, yes. Oh, I'm sorry. You know, I can't hear in my right ear. I'm sorry, Stephen. So that's, yes, it would go into the 54. So this is what the model shows with this configuration of piping. And you'll see it's that red line in the middle it's eventually going to get up to at the high point. And it keeps the flows down inside the pipe. It doesn't surcharge the manholes. So we believe this approach, basically, it eliminates that one point, that junction point that sort of backed up everything. And really, that's the presentation. That's what our study showed in that area.
I have questions, so I guess I'll start and then we can jump around. The proposed fix, is there a cost that we have estimated associated with that?
We do. I don't know it off the top of my head.
Looks like
It's
a few people.
$378,000. The
I
projected.
didn't hear you.
The projected cost is approximately $378,000, correct?
378?
Yes.
Okay.
All I will say, that is based on if we go out to bid with this project. As you know, we have our own construction services team. I think we would reduce that significantly, perhaps by $240,000 to somewhere between $130 and $150, if we do it ourselves.
Correct.
He's making it easy for you. All right, so I think that there are some commissioners who this falls in their ward that would like to speak. I would like to say, I think that this is a problem we have in various locations throughout the township, and unfortunately, I think that it's going to be a problem until we fix it, so I'm certainly in favor of us doing something to help the residents over there that are dealing with this. It's no way to live. But let's, Commissioner, let's start with Commissioner Zappone, since he's on the committee, and then we'll jump over to you. Commissioner Thompson, is that good? Yeah. Okay, cool.
Mike, you're talking and like kind of focusing on Monroe.
Yes,
Now, I've been dealing with that issue on Monroe for 20 years. Okay, and about 15 years ago, Abenizio came in and done all that work.
Okay.
So I want to go down as far as Penn Avenue, where
We
I
did-
have a serious problem.
Well, we studied all the way down to Penn Avenue, and the model showed it should be contained in the pipes, Commissioner, but we can talk further. I was not aware there was a problem further down.
Absolutely. Again, I've been dealing with this flooding issue in my ward for 20 years. Okay, so I could tell you every spot that gets it. And the flood of 96, we lost 2 residents on Madison Avenue. Okay, and then
I'm well
2001, we
familiar.
had the repeat, the same thing. So, you know, I know Monroe's bad. I've been out there 100 times during a heavy storm. But, you know, we got to work our way down to Penn. Tennis is a problem. Penn Avenue is a problem. So we got to really get into that.
Okay.
I mean, I could talk to you afterwards if you want.
This is flooding overground or up from the storm sewer? Yes, both.
Yeah, so I'll talk, I don't want to tie up the meeting, but I'll see you afterwards.
Very good.
Okay, go ahead, Mike.
Actually, I want to just dovetail off of Commissioner Zappone's question for a moment, too. And it's more directed towards Manager Manfredi, but can you tell us how this plugs into the stormwater management master plan that we've been working through?
This is an isolated puzzle piece. I mean, this would be one piece of the puzzle that would go into the whole stormwater plan. If you remember, we accelerated this. This was discussed at a meeting where we were going to accelerate this location and actually we, Chief, because we're isolated problems that we could study and then take all of this data as one puzzle piece and put it into the overarching stormwater plan. And when we put that stormwater proposal together, that was factored into that this piece was already done.
Okay. And then one other question for you. Is there a way that the work can be phased? I mean, I know we need a box in Hamel and a box in Monroe. Could we do the Hamel box, which is downstream, first and do it in 1 year and then do the fit out of Monroe the second year?
I would think the more important thing would be to eliminate that junction is almost acting like a dam or a weir in Monroe first.
Okay,
I mean, this could be done in stages.
okay.
I mean, you're not replacing that whole line. I mean, the green's existing, so it's the blue pipes that are new here. But you're right, the boxes are a large thing. Perhaps maybe I get with Timmy about directing the water with with not 90-degree elbows, but like 45s or 22s into the pipe. It may save that 12 by 8 box in Hamel. So we can look at that.
Okay. All right. And I'll close by just encouraging everyone. This has been a significant problem in our ward for some time, and in Commissioner Zappone's ward as well. And we could really use this fix. So, I would encourage you all to pass it forward.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Commissioner Thompson. Commissioner Carswell, you had a question? Sorry.
Yes, can you keep it on this slide? I just wanted to ask where the homes are. Are those the boxes that are towards the left of this diagram? I'd like some clarity about
The homes-
how disruptive this is into the homes of I mean, it's clear that the citizens in this area want help, but I wanted to understand how much destruction is going to happen to fix this problem.
Okay, well, there's a home here, there's a home here, there's a home here. I'm not sure about that lot.
That's an empty lot.
That's an empty lot. There's a home up here, but they have a large, I guess it's their lawn, it's an empty lawn, and then there's 2 homes here.
Okay.
So the construction's really mostly in the street and on empty lots.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Spiegelman.
Thank you, Chairman Rothman. I just want to say, as Manager Manfredi mentioned, another area that was looked at and where Mike and the folks at BCM did another excellent analysis, although ours didn't have animation. I'm kind of feeling a little ripped off.
I can get that for you.
Please do.
Please don't, there's probably a cost.
in and around Wheat Chief in a section of Highland Farms. So, certainly knowing the imperative there and also appreciating what both Commissioner Zapone's and Commissioner Thompson's residents have been going through. I just want to echo what you said, Chairman Rothman, that I support this.
Thank you, Commissioner Spiegelman. Do we have any other questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Brodsky.
Give me your best estimate, how quickly this is going to get done, and what's the benefit to the residents?
I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Give me a quick estimate of how quickly can this get done, and what relief will be provided for the residents?
Construction time
Yes.
or schedule?
I want it from the day you break ground to the day you
8
finish.
weeks.
8 weeks in its entirety?
Yes,
Can you commit to that?
yes.
And what's the benefit? Will this resolve the problem in its entirety?
According to the graphs we've seen, yes, it'll.
Graphs they don't resolve problems. I want to know if for certainty that this is going to resolve the issue, because these residents deserve relief based upon those pictures. So it's going to cure the problem in its entirety?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay, we'll see. Okay, thanks.
There you go. It's ominous. Commissioner Klein, please be a little more uplifting.
So where's the money coming from? Do we have we looked at
GON, there's
GON?
general obligation note or fund balance. They're the 2 only places to take the money from. The construction money from the general obligation note or fund balance.
Which note?
There's 1.5 currently, I guess.
Just over, yes.
There's
And
what?
then there would be 1.1 after the work is scheduled. Is that what you came up with?
If the work was scheduled for next year, with what we have scheduled this year, going into 2020, we should have in the neighborhood of 1.1.
1.1 from,
What you call the bond.
I understand that, but from which bond? A bond we're taking or a bond
Oh,
we
no, no,
currently have?
the current bond money.
We're working off of a current bond.
Correct.
And what's being displaced, or are we finding that there were savings in some of the projects that were allocated in that bond?
My understanding is that money was drawn down but not expended on projects.
Are the projects still outstanding?
There's $300,000 to $400,000 worth of outstanding projects. That's where the
300,000?
So we have 1.5 right now.
Right.
He has $400,000 in scheduled projects. After that, we'd be at 1.1. Provided, really it's depending upon the outcome of the overarching stormwater plan. So whatever we take from this will not be available for the other stormwater work.
That's already scheduled as part of the bond?
No, that's unappropriated, undetermined what work that will be.
So reallocating this money or using this money as part of the bond will not push another project that was already allocated as part of that bond?
That is correct.
Okay. And and you said that bond is, when do we have to expend that bond? By next year?
No, I think the recent information we received is that we don't have to, and we got an extension from the bank, so that we do not have to draw down that money.
Till, extension till
For
when?
a year, I guess like a year May, I believe it is. I'll have to look at the note, at the letter.
Okay. So, all right. So you're confident that this is going to come out of the bond, but not out of fund balance?
I will verify with Ms. Herman in the morning, but that is the information we have as of today.
Okay. I mean, I would strongly suggest that if it comes out of bond and it's not displacing another project, then so be it. But if there's a possibility that this is going to come out of fund balance, we need to have a serious conversation about expending those kind of cash, this kind of money out of fund balance. We've been reviewing the state of the permanent improvement fund and the fund balance going forward and projecting out the next few years. And to keep eating into it without a plan is somewhat problematic, considering the fact that our fund balance policy is not going to be pushing too much additional money into the permanent improvement fund over the foreseeable future. And therefore, I would caution the open-ended use of fund balance funds. And if we can use it out of the bond, then I'd be happy to look at that. But going out of fund balance is problematic.
And to that point, in answer to the question about how would this affect the overall stormwater? Well, obviously, if you move forward with this now, that money's not available for whatever that final overarching stormwater plan would have.
Who did the engineering on that spaghetti that was done prior? Do we have an idea of where that came from?
The 27-inch line goes back to the 70s, comes down from Jenkintown Road.
And tying in all those Y connections?
Over
and
the years,
the
it's-
additional 48-inch pipe that was teed off to create a hydrostatic push? I mean, where did that all come from? Who came up with that?
I couldn't tell you, Stephen. It came 80s, 90s. I think the last inlet was added sometime in the late 90s, early 2000s, trying to get water into the system when it was figured out it was just too much volume.
Okay. I don't know how we engineered something that, even in layman's terms, just looking at it doesn't work. So I don't know how that's something like that came to pass. You say the last time that 48, is the 48-inch bypass, is that the last work that was done in this area?
Yes, the 48,
And when was that done?
2000.
15 years ago. Ebenezer did all that work. They
That-
did all the work from Penn right up,
That was Joe and Bradley,
or
Commissioner.
Joe and Bradley, yeah. That's when that was done, around 2003.
Yeah.
And those extra inlets on Monroe, I had them put them in there because the amount of water that was on Monroe. And in defense of my residents, we've been dealing with this for 20 years. It's a very serious problem in Ardsley, okay? So this is affecting people's lives and their property. I mean, my ward is flood prone, okay? And I'm sure Commissioner Thompson's is, I know it is. So, this is something that we're not just casting out there and say, well, maybe we can get this done, it's a paint and paper thing. No. It's a very serious problem where 2 of my residents died as a result of this flooding. So that's how serious it is.
So I have a couple other questions after that. I know you worked on this, and I think you were looking at something else in Ward 11. Do we have I know we're working on some kind of stormwater master plan. Do we have an overall plan as to what priorities are out there, how serious certain aspects, certain problems that we're dealing with, that are being dealt with in different parts of the township, and the feasibility and the cost? Or are we just going to continue to have these things come in front of us piecemeal and have to try to figure out where the money's coming from and when the work's going to get done and which one's more of a priority than the other?
Let's just.
Commissioner Zapone's talking about his being a priority, which I'm sure it is, obviously, but there's other priorities, and we should have some type of plan as to how they're going to be handled. And funding source, with all due respect, there's some people that don't want to fund certain parts of the general fund. They keep voting against tax increases and stuff like that and don't want to fund it, but we want to just keep throwing money. So I'd like to understand what the overall plan is here instead of seeing it piecemeal.
So we have a plan, and the plan was what was budgeted for the projects that Mr. Clark all the projects that he's moving forward with were approved as part of this fiscal year's budget. The plan was very simply to take the overarching stormwater plan, do all of the studies, and not do any work. And as you may recall, and I don't remember the specific agenda, and I think it's in the supporting documentation, in both the case of Wheat Chief and Ardsley, these two studies were discussed here, and the board, as a group, decided to move these forward, study them, and then bring them back for further discussion and determination. So the plan is very simple. The work to be done by our construction crews is only what is appropriated for in the budget. All other work, there will be no other projects besides that unless this board authorizes them until the stormwater study is done next year. And we timed the proposal of the consultants to have at least numbers we can use in 2020's budget to phase those in. That is the plan.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'm good, thank you.
Do we have any other questions or
Let
comments?
me just add this, just so we're clear. We talked about ours, but we did not talk about Wheat Chief. So Mr. Philmeyer also did Wheat Chief, which is going to be somewhere in the neighborhood of $200-some thousand. Based on the way we can move forward and work it from the bottom of the pond, so to speak, we can move forward with that work out of existing dollars for, what was that number, Tim?
20,000?
Right, and we'll do the work, and all of the other work will be added to the overarching stormwater plan, not done now. So we're doing that so as we don't have to ask for this kind of money. We can wait for the plan to be done. Is that not accurate, Mr. Philmeyer?
That's correct.
Thank you.
As I understand it, I have a location in my ward that I want to be looked at like this. I'm sure folks across the board here do. So I fully appreciate and understand Commissioner Klein's point and the concept behind it, and I think we really do need to be smart about our budgeting process for this. With that said, the residents that are there and looking at those pictures, it's clearly a disaster. So, you know, to ignore it is something that I don't see as a good solution for those residents. But do we have any comments from any staff members?
Sorry, Commissioner Rothman, can I just say one other thing?
Of course.
So if we are looking at several projects in the near future, I mean, it's my understanding that we do have room in our bond schedule that should be looked at if we're going to do a good portion of projects and see how that bond is going to affect, an additional bond for stormwater is going to affect our debt service and in turn affect the general fund budget. But instead of doing a piecemeal, we should be looking at how, we've done this in the past, where we've grouped projects together and have gone out and bonded those. And I believe we have room in our bonding schedule.
The thing, to your point, though, we are trying not to spend that money. We are trying to hold that money back until such time as the stormwater, township-wide stormwater study is done.
Right.
So frankly, we're only moving forward, if we move forward with this, the only reason we're doing it is because the board has decided to do that. So I guess what I'm saying is I would recommend that we don't keep adding projects in the interim. Let's wait for the overarching study.
Okay, but I guess I'm not convinced that this is I mean, it may very well be, but there's nothing's convincing me because I don't know all the other projects that people are talking about and whether they're a higher priority than this one. And I'm not doubting that this is important. I just don't know that, I mean, I don't know how the board makes an educated decision on expending money and that we have in front of us if we don't understand the priorities. And
I guess what I'm saying, there aren't any that you haven't already seen, other than the Wheat Chief and this one. Everything else you've already seen. This you've now seen. Wheat Chief is 300 feet, 200 feet? How many?
300.
Feet of piping that's really came as a result of this study, but it's really not. It's work that we're going to do as part of a project.
15.
The study part won't be done. We're trying not to do that because we don't want to take, the only reason we're taking, no other way to say it, the only reason we would be taking any dollars away from the money set aside for what happens at the end of that study is because you commissioned this study, and if the board votes next week to take this money to do this. That's it. There are no other plans. My recommendation would be that if we can, unless there's an emergency or crisis or some immediate health concern, that we would not do any other plans than those that are already in the pipeline, so to speak, if you forgive the pun, until we have the study done.
Does this project or the other project you're talking about require any right-of-way acquisitions or temporary easements?
No.
Are they already existing easements or public lands?
They are in existing easement. On the one diagram, you can see the sanitary sewer parallels as well.
Yeah,
So we do have a sanitary and storm easement.
for this project, and the same with Wheat Chief?
We chief would be out in the roadway.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Vehy.
Sorry, I just need clarification.
Apologize.
I think the motion in front of us is to accept the study, but I think you just said next week we'd be voting on whether to approve the construction project.
Well, what the agenda item should say, if my memory is correct, that it's to consider and discuss and determine next steps.
Okay.
So you've considered, discussed it, there would have to be a motion offered to move forward with the installation of this at a cost not to exceed whatever, what would you say, 150,000?
Yes.
That would be the way I would, if you were going to move forward with doing this, we would do it in-house at a cost not to exceed 150,000. That's one thing you can determine. You could determine to do nothing and wait for this to be added to the stormwater study, and then make a determination to see how overarching, going down to Penn or going somewhere else, how that might change this project. So I guess that would beg the question, Mr. Philmeyer. Mr. Philmeyer, you look at this area, you look down to Penn, knowing that the township, and just so everyone understands, his company chose not to submit a proposal for the overarching stormwater study. Is that correct?
You were just time.
Well, I'm sorry, you're correct. Yeah, I was trying to, there was another firm, I apologize. Yeah, thanks. But anyway, your view of this, do you see that moving forward with this would fit into, would in any way negatively affect the overarching stormwater study we're doing township-wide, plus your years of experience here?
No, I don't think so. It's, and part of the scope for the stormwater study was to identify projects throughout the townships, and I believe it was to identify the top 3 projects, I believe, in the township for further studies like this. And of course, that can change on to the board's opinion. That was phase 1, right?
So I have a follow-up. If we need to do a motion to approve the construction, I agree with Commissioner Klein's concerns that I want to direct the funding source. I do want it coming out the GON. I do not want it coming out the fund balance. So that's my opinion, but that's the motion I would like to vote on.
Then if you would make that motion and include with funds to be used from the general obligation note, not the fund balance.
Okay. Do I do that now? Oh, I can't. I'm not a committee member.
Correct.
Thank you.
I got you, bro. Commissioner Spiegelman, so a question? Yep.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Rothman. It's just a brief comment. We're talking about, Wheat Chief, and there's, what Tim mentioned, there's the very small project to be done with existing funds, but that broader swath that BCM carefully analyzed throughout that area of Highland Farms, I mean, ultimately, that's basically just, Manager Manfredi, correct me if I'm wrong, that's basically just sort of, that's a component of the overall study, because it's analyses like these that are going to be done throughout the township to find all the problematic areas. So basically, we've just gotten a little jump on the overall study.
That's one way to say it.
All right. Great, thank you.
All right, so it sounds like I'm personally in favor, and I guess maybe as chair, I have that power to modify the motion.
There is no motion, so you can frame it however you.
Right, I'm saying, so, I mean, what I'm saying is to frame it in the way that has been suggested and seems to be collectively more palatable. With that said, should we go to the public for a comment after the motion, or, because I mean,
Yes.
I know we got a lot going.
After the motion.
Okay, so if we're going to, I don't know the exact terminology, and I want to make sure we have it right, since it's going to be in a motion. I'd like to recommend that we move forward with this in a way that it's capped with the approval for 150 right now, and that it's coming out of the bond, not out of the
General
fund.
obligation note.
Right. Is that, any comments from the committee before I make any motion? Well, I was going to say, if you didn't like that motion, I was going to say, yeah, okay. So I move for us to proceed. I understand that, but I was, yeah, I got you. I got you. I move for us to approve up to $150,000 in funding for the portion of the Ardsley area stormwater study addressed in the presentation this evening, with the $150,000 to come from the,
General obligation note.
what?
General obligation note.
Okay, from the general obligation note and not from any other funds, and I so move.
Hold on, I have a question here before we proceed. So this 150, what is that going to cover?
Well,
The way we see it, Commissioner, is as it's outlined there, the construction needed
For one street, right?
for the flow from Hamel through Monroe, correct?
Okay, so what happens down further?
Well, you and I have to get together and talk about the problem areas that you've identified lower. Our pipe model shows that the 100-year storm is contained in the existing pipe network. So that's what I need to know a little bit more about, the problem areas that you're seeing.
As part of this study, this originally was supposed to be not only Monroe, but Penn. So I don't know what happened here.
No, we ran the model all the way.
I understand that, but I don't know if you know the real issue down further, okay? Where I've been in people's backyards are flooded, okay? So, you know, we're gonna fix one area and the other area maybe in a couple of years from now. I'm just like, you know, like, what happened?
Commissioner Zepone, if I may, this doesn't preclude us from looking at any other areas. What was studied as part of this and what the recommendation is that's in front of us is what we're seeking to approve and move forward with this evening.
So what
So-
happens to my residents on Penn Avenue?
Well-
And Tennis? I need to know that, and they need to know because they're watching.
Well, I mean, then, you know, obviously you have the option of voting against this and doing it in
I'm not
some
going to
other
vote
way.
against it because I've been dealing with Monroe for 20 years, so I'm not voting against that. Okay, anytime somebody's house gets flooded, their property is destroyed.
I understand.
I'm never going to vote no against that.
Well, I
I've been
understand.
through it myself in the flood in 96
Okay.
and 2001. I've been there, I've been in flood.
Perhaps you're not understanding what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we can move forward with this or not, is what I'm saying. So I suggest that, per your request earlier, that what we have as my proposed motion would at least address part of your concern, and that's what I'm getting at. Manager Manfredi?
Mike, you did look at Penn. Your answer is that in the model you ran going down to Penn, that the water would be contained, held, as a matter of fact, in the pipes.
It would not surcharge out of the manholes.
So it would be held in the pipes. It would not surcharge out. So you did look down to Penn. I think what I'm hearing Commissioner Zepone ask is, did you look at Penn? And you're saying you did. When you looked at this, you went down to Penn and determined that the water wouldn't surcharge. It would be held in the pipe.
Right. But what Commissioner's saying, that's not what they're seeing in the field. So I need to know more exactly.
Remember, just to give you a little history, Okay, and we're working on Edge Hill and Tyson right now. All this comes from up on Edge Hill, down to Tyson, through the cemetery, and then it floods Ardsley. That's what this is all about. That's where the water comes from. So,
The water from the Edge Hill Tyson area, really, it dumps into the hillside cemetery and is directed towards the basin and the Ardsley Wildlife.
basins in the cemetery.
So
correct.
the water in this particular trunk, storm sewer, it comes from the Ardsley Cemetery off of Jenkintown Road and the areas on the other side of Jenkintown Road, Edge Hill and Hazel, Elk area. If you look in there, they're the largest flows. There's 50 drainage areas that all funnel, obviously, into this pipe. But on the drainage areas at the headwater, so to speak, is the railroad down and the area above on Jenkintown Road by Hazel and Elk. So, but it's a lot of flow. I'm not dismissing it. And Edge Hill and the Tyson project, the new storm pipes are directing the flows into Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary and the basins that were put in after the 96 flood. We call it the Railroad Basin, et cetera. So it all flows to the Sandy Run, right? So that's where, yeah. So.
All right, returning now to your motion. Have somebody second it. I'll second it.
Is someone willing to second the motion that I said a while ago?
I am willing to second your motion.
We need anything, Counselor? We're all right? Public comment? Yeah, okay, I just want to make sure we didn't need to re-clarify or anything. Cool. Thank you so much. Comments from the public?
Hi there. I'm Melissa Landsman. I'm actually the person who is 655 Monroe Avenue, so I really want to say this. I know there's a lot to look at here. I do appreciate you guys, all of you, all of the commissioners taking this into consideration. The damage that is done to our neighborhood, just so you have a face to it, it's not just my driveway, which we can't get repaved because it keeps flooding out and it's crumbling away, the driveway that the township put in 2003 after the construction of this sewer system. It's also our basement that continually floods because of the groundwater is backing up. So this is not only dangerous for us, and it's our neighbors on the other side that I wish were here tonight because they have even had more damage than we've had. But also I look at this as a correction of what was going on in 2003 because this was supposed to fix it. And I never had flooding. Some flooding with the 2001, but I never had this flooding when I moved in 1999. And now I do on a regular basis. This weekend, it just keeps flooding. So I do appreciate you taking this into consideration, and I thank you.
Thank you for being here. Any other comment from the public? Name and address for the record.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. And I'd also like to point out, while I'm asking my question, that the gentleman chose this to use his laser pointer on, and from that particular corner.
Let's address that another time.
Well, but from that corner.
I got you, but.
We can't, it just happened here. So in
I
other
understand.
words, from other places, if he had chosen that one, we wouldn't be able to film it. So I'm trying to point out to you the necessity. As you
We can talk
see,
about
it's
this,
a
though, but-
purposeful. No, it's purposeful. You can see that from here.
Okay.
The question that I had for the gentleman from BCM is I just couldn't either hear properly or didn't quite understand what the difference between the 378,000 and that it could be reduced. I thought he said if we do it ourselves. So in other words, if the township does it or if BCM
Correct.
does it? Okay. So if the township does it themselves, it'll be that much less.
Mr. Clark, tell me if I'm wrong, but it would be a reduction of cost, but there would still be some expense that would be necessary, right, that we don't handle?
If it was done by in-house construction services, that's where we would realize the savings.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, so
Okay.
I guess I would wonder why, with that great a difference, why we would ever consider, getting a bid for anything different. And then the other thing that I wanted to say is, as all of you know, some of you haven't been around that long, but I, in the beginning, was told many, many things. There was no money for it, there was no money for it. And finally, I decided, oh, I guess I really need to understand the budget. At the time that I did that, we actually had close to $19 million in unassigned funds. That quickly went down to some funds were assigned, and we were between $13 and $16 million. And we had people, and this is less than the 20 years ago, because I've only been doing this for 13 years, practically a snap out of my life, okay? But in those 13 years, we have had people here flooding desperately, while at the end of each year, we have millions of dollars going, in other words, an overage of millions of dollars. And that 19 million disappeared very quickly once I brought it to light. And while we had the 19 million, we had certain commissioners asking for tax increases. So I think that particular aspect of the residents who are flooding and not getting attended to needs to be looked at carefully. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anybody else from the public that would like to speak on this matter? Okay. With that said, motion's been moved and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Now have, thank you for being here and your explanation.
Thank you.
Now the opportunity, members of the public, if they would like to make public comment on any public works matter.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. It crosses all committees to see that this, clearly, Mr. Manfredi told me he wanted the people closer to him so he could talk to them or communicate with them. That's clearly not the case. He has them pushed to the back. Therefore, the spot that we need to do the filming is not available. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members of the public comment on general public works issues? All right, hearing none, I'll make a motion to adjourn. So moved.
Well, I'm waiting for him to sit down.
Sorry.
Good evening. I'd like to call the Public Safety Committee meeting of May 1st to order. Can I have a roll call, please? Here.
Here. Here.
Here.
Here.
Thank you. And now, a motion to approve the committee meeting minutes of March 6, 2019, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any corrections, additions from anybody? Hearing none, let's vote on it. How many in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Any problems with it? No? Okay. We're going to start off this evening with, do you have a report, or you want to just go right into the presentation?
We could do the presentation if you'd like.
Very good. We're going into a presentation.
If we could ask Deputy Chief Kelly Warner to join us. As you know, last month, Deputy Chief Warner was given an award by the Mid-Atlantic Women in Law Enforcement, which is comprised of a number of agencies through a number of states, and it's a very competitive award. I know she objects to it being called the Lifetime Achievement Award because she has so much more to offer and so many more years to serve. So I'm proud to stand here with Commissioner Lori Schreiber to present this award this evening.
Thank you. We're very proud of you, and you are a role model not just to the women in this area, but also regionally, and it's just unbelievable. So that's great. You've done good work. You've been around doing this, not for a lifetime, but for enough. How's that?
3 decades.
Okay. Whereas Deputy Chief Kelly D. Warner is a member of the Abington Township Police Department. Whereas Deputy Chief Warner has served the Abington community for the past 30 years, where she served as the first female tactical unit officer and dare officer. Whereas Deputy Chief Warner was promoted to the rank of sergeant in 2000, where she was promoted to president of the Mid-Atlantic Association of Women in Law Enforcement in 2012 and served until 2016. Where she was promoted to the rank of lieutenant in 2013, where she was promoted to the rank of deputy chief in 2017, where she is a lifetime member of the Mid-Atlantic Association of Women in Law Enforcement, where she was honored with their Lifetime Achievement Award. Whereas Deputy Chief Warner has not only dedicated herself to department growth, she has dedicated herself to continued education as a student and as a professor, where she is an advocate and a mentor. Now, therefore, be it proclaimed the first day of May 2019 that Deputy Chief Warner be honored for her countless achievements and for serving all people of the Township of Abington with respect and distinction, and is herewith recognized by this formal expression of gratitude and thanks by the Township Manager and the Township Board of Commissioners of the Township of Abington. Congratulations. You go in there right here.
Thank you, thank you.
I will, just very quickly, thank you, Commissioner Schreiber, President Luker, the entire board, Mr. Manfredi, thank you very much, Chief Malloy. It's an honor to come to work every single day in a job that you love, to work alongside quality men and women who enjoy doing the job just as much as you do, and yeah, even more so to work in a community that loves you back and that cares as much as we do serving as they do living here. So thank you very much. It's quite an honor. Appreciate it.
I'm not on here. Do you also have any announcements you want to make?
I
or
do.
a new report?
Madam Chair and members of the board, I just wanted to briefly go over a few things that have been happening over the last few weeks and just to cover a few events this month. It's one of the busiest months on the calendar for the police department because of all the community events, but I never can recall a time where we had members of our police department honored from so many outside organizations. And just to go over a few, some of you are aware of these, but just last week, Mary Carminati was recognized by the Willow Grove Seventh-day Adventist Church for her efforts in the community with youth aid panel and diversionary groups, giving kids a second chance through community service instead of bringing them through the court systems. So that was an honor, and I'm proud to congratulate Mary Carminati and our Community Policing Division on that achievement. Lieutenant Sauerman, Sergeant Gillespie, Officer Townsend, Dave Rondinelli, and others just completed the 2-month Citizens Police Academy, which was very successful, in which we had 42 residents graduate, and that was just last Wednesday. Tomorrow evening, our public school DARE graduation. If you have never gone to that before, there's no place in the township where there is more enthusiasm and energy. The officers and the students and staff, it's just a great event. So if you get a chance to come, that is 7 p.m. tomorrow night at the Abington Senior High. Sergeant Roger Gillespie is going to be honored by Access Services, which is a group that helps out, comprised mostly of social service representatives that help people in crises. Our hub, which is a group that meets every 2 weeks, Sergeant Gillespie put his heart and soul into that. I think it started back when Deputy Chief Warner was back in community policing, but they have had so many successful events. As we all know, when people are committing crimes, there's usually underlying issues with drug abuse, with mental illness, with poverty, and other things. So the work that they have done in this is great, and Sergeant Gillespie, it's long overdue, but he will be recognized tomorrow night also for that. On May 8th, Sergeant Kent and Detective Lieutenant Steve Fink will be recognized by the District Attorney's Office for the outstanding work that they have done. You're already familiar with Sergeant Kent's job with the domestic, where he had to use deadly force last year. He will be not only recognized by the District Attorney's Office, but also on May 22nd, the Citizens Crime Commission in Delaware Valley, which is a very competitive process, but he was selected with the Award for Valor and Heroism. Rick Williams will be, from Channel 6, will be hosting that, and that's going to be a great event. Detectives Rob Davis and Ronnie Griffith, and I'll only go on for another 2 minutes, Commissioner, I apologize,
these
but
are wonderful.
never seen so many officers be recognized at one time. Officers Rob Davis and Ronnie Griffith, you may have seen this on Facebook. They did a series, Beneath the Vest. They talked very candidly and courageously about post-traumatic stress disorder. You know, on Cross Road in Glenside several years ago, Detective Davis was shot on a domestic and returned fire and was involved in a very critical incident, and he suffered some of the trauma related to that post-traumatic stress. Ronnie Griffith, who is our animal control officer, as you know, was a SWAT officer for NYPD for several years, and he responded to 9/11 and also dealt with some issues related to that. They had the courage to get on video and conducted interviews, and they helped other military veterans and also police officers dealing with stress, taking the stigma away from looking for help. Catholic Schools DARE graduation at St. Basil's Academy will also be on May 8th at 7 p.m. May 12th to the 18th is National Police Week. Officer Liz Cartwright will be riding from Philadelphia to D.C., and Deputy Chief Warner will be supporting Officer Liz Cartwright and others on that ride. May 18th and 19th, the Citizens and Police together will be having their 25th annual 24-hour relay challenge, where we will be presenting an award in honor of Commissioner and retired Officer Mike Gillespie. I don't know who the recipient is, but maybe Commissioner Gillespie will cover that at the end. But very successful event in Mike's name a couple weeks ago for the Save the Parade. And I believe that is it. Body cameras. I'm sorry. 3/4 of our body cameras have been deployed. Lieutenant Porter and others will announce sometime where we would ask the commissioners for help, because we want to get out to the community and have an open house, so to speak, where we can talk about the technology and our policies and procedures related to that. It was a big undertaking. I want to compliment Lieutenant Porter, Deputy Chief Warner, and others who were able to get this off the road, and you for paying for it.
Thank you so much. Are there any questions for the chief from anybody? Let's see whose hand they're on. Commissioner Vahey.
Chief, I wanted to commend the department on High Five Fridays. I think it's a great idea. Could you just give a description of the program for the public if they're not already aware?
Yes, on Friday mornings, and I will give credit to Deputy Chief Warner, who approached me on this several weeks ago and talked to the superintendent. On Friday mornings, when the children are getting off the bus, officers are going to be present at each and every school in the township. Rain or shine, apparently, and I was told that the rain wasn't going to scare them away, but you could see when you see the faces of the staff and the students, it's just a simple gesture, but we're doing this, I think, every Friday that we can, Commissioner. but I'd have to verify that with Deputy Chief Warner. But our goal is to do it every Friday during the nicer weather of the springtime.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have a question or statement?
There is something that, if you said this and I missed it, stop me.
Okay.
But I didn't hear you talk about where you just were and how you were the only one invited is from Pennsylvania.
Yes.
And I think it's important for everyone to understand because you are humble. So I'm going to make you talk about yourself.
Well, thank you, Mr. Manager Manfredi. About 3 weeks ago, I was selected in the state of Pennsylvania to go to the FBI National Academy Law Enforcement Executive Development Seminar, which was comprised of chiefs from small cities, large towns, 50,000 residents to 250,000 residents. But thank you, Manager. I will tell you that spending a week with chiefs from all over the country, we left with some really valuable lessons and some things that we are implementing almost immediately, and I've spoken to the manager about a few of these things, but it was it was humbling and rewarding to be down there, and I have to spend one more week in Charlottesville, Virginia for the second part of this training seminar. So thank you.
Congratulations. Very good. Very good. We have Rich Garrett here, and who turned his report in earlier this month. Do you have any other thing that you want to discuss? Okay. And our fire marshal is here as well. Your report? Okay, thank you. We have no unfinished business, so we'll go right into our new business. PS1 is a motion to advertise ordinance number 2165, amending Chapter 156, Vehicles and Traffic, Article 2, Traffic Regulations, Section 14, Stop Intersections, and Article 3, Parking Regulations, Section 25, Parking Prohibited at all times, no parking between signs, no parking here to corner, to add stop intersections on Green Road, Eagle Road, Morden Road, Pembroke Road, Upsall Road, Rubicam Avenue, add no parking here to corner on Arbuda Road, Central Avenue, and Montgomery Avenue, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Go ahead. Staff, audience, any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. PS2 is a motion that was up for discussion only. I would ask that it be tabled this evening, as I don't believe the committee is ready to discuss this at this time, and we haven't really talked to staff about it. Are there any comments on tabling it? I know it's the last minute. Yes. Commissioner Rothman.
The issue of calming traffic is something that I believe we all deal with. I know for me, it's by far the number one thing that residents bring up to me repeatedly, and I believe deservedly. And so I do believe it's progress that we have a policy that we're looking to get implemented, and I strongly believe that we will get something implemented. In having discussions leading up to this evening, there were certain things that people were either inquiring further on or did not feel comfortable in voting right now. And quite frankly, if there's certain things that we may be able to get done for this community, and it's either a yes or no, or to try to meet in the middle amongst some of the commissioners, I think that it's important that we get something done so we're making progress on traffic safety in the community. I've had so many conversations and meetings with Officer Freed in the past few months that he probably is going to find a way to block me through email and phone. But I do know where you live. And you know where I live, so we're even. But I think tabling this is something that would be productive for the residents of Abington. However, I've already made clear to Commissioner Schreiber that I think we need to get this back on the agenda in June and start working on getting things moving, because after that, we are going to have to worry about budgeting for getting certain things done if there's going to be certain projects that fit the parameters. And it's a long process. And to my residents out there that I told I was going to be voting and hopefully passing something this evening, talk to me about it and talk to your commissioners about it, because we do care, and traffic safety is my #1 priority. So thank you for letting me speak,
So
Commissioner
yes,
Schreiber.
traffic calming is the main thing, and so tabling it till June when we have more of a chance to talk to the police department and stuff is a good idea. Yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Schreiber. With regard to the comment that Commissioner Rothman just made, ditto.
Thank you. So with that being tabled, do we have to vote on tabling it? There should be a motion. Okay. Can I have a motion to table PS2?
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Do we have to have, we just had comment on it, I guess. Further comment on that? To table? Okay. Okay. So can we have a vote on the motion to table? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we're up to public comment. Do we have any public comment on Public Safety Committee issues this evening?
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. So a public safety issue is if there are problems and concerns that residents have, and there's no place to report them or no one who will respond, that is a public safety matter. That's a matter, as you know, I reported many, many times about residents with fire equipment that didn't work and personnel that were not doing the job that needed to be done, and the documents were very clear on that. And yet, when I reported it, there was silence. Just as tonight, I'm reporting that things that were not true were said. And the effort here is to withhold information from the public. Very clearly, this situation, all of you can see, is not about Mr. Manfredi speaking and having his staff closer to him. He's pushed them further away. So that's a public safety issue when there is no place to report wrongdoing or things that are dangerous and nobody to respond. And you yourself, Madam Chair, have been guilty of that time and time again, where I've said to you, somebody needs to address these things, and there is nobody addressing them. And that is a danger to this community, and residents have been kept in danger. I myself was invited into situations that were dangerous, unbeknownst to me. The flooding that we talked about before, the 2 people that died, in the investigations that several of us did as I began to get the flood victims together and share stories, we found out that there had been money to make a fix to that problem, but the residents didn't really know about it. In fact, a couple of people decided they didn't want their property adjusted, and so that money was still sitting, something like, I don't know, I guess it was 10, 15 years later. It was still sitting there, and they were about to release it and get rid of it. So these are public safety issues, in one case that costs lives already, in another case that have cost, they've cost residents across this township undue hardship and undue financial and emotional stress. That needs to change. That is against the health, safety, and welfare interests. And this is a perfect example of it, where they only need to be moved up and the information can be accommodated. The same people that have withheld, for instance, the documents on the BET issue since November 15th, I still don't have them. That's a public safety issue. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments?
Hello.
Okay.
Hello, good evening. I'm Khaki Evans. I live at 1132 Lindsay Lane. Last week, on behalf of the Township's Environmental Advisory Council, we were given a free ticket to an international conference up in Manhattan called the CDP-NET. It used to stand for Carbon Disclosure Project. And when I shared with the companies, there were 13 other cities there. We were one of the small ones, but when I shared with them about that a city of our size, or I should say a municipality of our size, has a volunteer fire department, they were just so impressed. They were impressed about all the accolades that our police department has. So I feel very, very comfortable about our public safety. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Any other comments from anybody? No? Then we'll have a motion to adjourn.
Good evening and welcome to the Administrative Code and Land Use Committee for May 1st, 2019. And welcome everyone, and may I have a roll call, please? Here.
Here.
Here. Here.
Here. Okay, and having said that, let's move on to a consider approval of the minutes, and I'm going to present a motion to approve the committee meeting minutes of March 6th, 2019. And are there any corrections, additions, deletions? Anybody want to make comments on that? Otherwise, okay.
I'll second the motion.
Thanks. Having heard the motion seconded by Commissioner Thompson, they are approved. We'll move on to the presentations for this evening. There are none. Moving on to unfinished business. There is no unfinished business, which leads us to two items this evening for new business. The first one being Administrative Code and Land Use Committee. So it's ACL-01-050919. This is to consider a motion approving the land development application for 3028 Raymond Avenue to extinguish an existing rain garden easement and rain garden and replace it with a new stormwater easement and stormwater dry well facility. And may I have I move that forward as a motion. Any comments?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any comments from members of the committee on this motion? Okay. Commissioner, having none from the commissioner? Michael?
Oh, yeah.
Commissioner Thompson?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Do you have a presentation?
Really, my name's Joe Doherty, and this is my wife Louise. We live at 3028 Raymond Avenue, and our engineer was supposed to be here, but he backed out, so we're stuck with it, and we're not too sure. So what we're going to do is we're looking to have a pool installed, and there's an existing rain garden there, and with the pool installed, it wouldn't have held up with the water, so we had to get an engineer to look at putting something else in, and he came out with a dry well system, a new system that we put in that could contain the water with the pool there. Thank you. So that would contain the water. The township engineer and my engineer sat down and discussed it, and they came up with this, and they thought it would be the best plan for it.
Okay. So, if I may.
No, I was going to ask the same questions you are, so you can. It's fine.
So the plan is to put a dry well in lieu of the rain garden?
Yes, and also to have like an overflow to tie into the existing rain garden.
Okay.
But yeah.
And how did we end up with an easement for the rain garden in the first place?
Sure. Mrs. Montgomery asked me to pinch hit tonight as she's out this week. This was a condition of approval for a prior land development application from September of 2012. So the stormwater easement and the rainwater conservation easement was part of the conditions of approval. So this would be modifying that approval that was granted back in 2012. My understanding is that Ms. Montgomery has reviewed everything, and there will be no increase in stormwater runoff from the property. It'll actually be decreased with the proposed dry well from the applicant.
So the current the rain garden that was there, that was in place since 2012, is that correct?
Correct.
That's before the stormwater management ordinance that we have in place now, which I think was 2014.
That's correct.
So the new dry well, is that going to conform with the current stormwater management ordinance?
Yes.
Okay.
Has the township reviewed everything in its entirety? And everything is satisfactory? So there's no issue?
Yes, Ms. Montgomery reviewed everything, and Mr. Penacao reviewed it from a zoning perspective.
Okay. Do we need to amend the motion, or we can leave it as is?
You can leave it as the original motion that was made.
Okay. Do you have anything further to present on this particular issue?
No.
I want to give you the opportunity. Do you want your engineer to come in at some point?
I want to make this as painless as possible.
All right, that's fine. I want to give you the opportunity. If you want to bring your engineer in, that'd be great. We can accommodate you, but if not, if you're ready to move forward as is, then,
Yeah, we're ready to move forward.
okay, so I'm going to, again, I'll present the motion itself. Do we have a second?
Second.
And I'm sorry, Commissioner Bowman.
I would just urge the committee to accept and pass this matter. I know that the residents, my residents, have had to retain counsel to alleviate this problem, and they have done so. And in addition to their engineer, they've retained outside counsel. So I think it satisfies the rainwater requirements. Thank you.
Okay, fair enough. We're doing public comment after each item, so if anybody has any public comment from any other commissioners, anybody from staff, any residents, having none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. And as we move on to, and for the record, my vote would count as an aye as well, so even though I didn't say it, but we move on to item number 2, which is ACL-02-050919. Thank you, folks, for coming in this evening. Update the motion, or the agenda item is to update the township comprehensive plan to be consistent with and as prescribed by the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code, through establishing and creating a comprehensive plan development team as prescribed in the comprehensive plan development team, scope and duties in a timeline consistent with the attached proposed CPDT timeline and milestones dated May 1, 2019, to be funded by already appropriated 2019 funds for planning services and from funds appropriated and remaining from the stormwater study and funds used as needed and offset from the parks and facilities study being performed. Second?
Second.
Any comments from committee members?
Could somebody say that in English, please? Thank you.
I could do it, or...
Very simply, you would be adopting the comprehensive plan, scope and duties for, and creating a development team with it being funded through current dollars funded for planning services that we already paid to Montgomery County Planning Commission, with any additional dollars coming from the difference between the stormwater and if we needed, we've reduced the scope. We've kind of split the parks and facilities $125,000 to offset it. So there's current dollars appropriated is my point. We're just spreading it out differently from these sources.
And
Thank you.
the Parks and Master Plan study, that's actually being adopted into the comprehensive plan, correct?
Say that again?
The Parks Master Plan, that's being adopted into the comprehensive plan?
Well, there's three pieces. There's, when we first started looking at this, and maybe this history would be helpful, a year ago, we looked at the comprehensive plan, and the commissioners thought that it would be more important to focus on parks facilities and recreation facilities. So we didn't do the master plan or the comprehensive plan. As we're moving forward with that parks master plan and the stormwater, it's becoming more and more apparent that updating the comprehensive plan, especially after other land use applications that have been in front of this board last year, that the comprehensive plan should be accelerated. And in order to accommodate that, we're moving away from the park master plan would become a part of the comprehensive plan, and this would be a component within the parks master plan. So we'll still move forward with the facilities, and as you develop the comprehensive plan, a component piece of that will be a parks master plan, and a component piece of that will be the work that's being done on this facilities plan. So they're building blocks on top of one another.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense. Yep.
Are there any comments? Commissioner Carswell.
I had some questions in the draft scope and duties that we were looking at. One of the questions I have was, during the discussion around the development of the YMCA lot, there was a number of people who came forward and spoke about the value of history and historic buildings, and we don't have a definition of that in our current comprehensive plan. And this draft references, forgive me, on page 2, it's the last bullet, it references a number of natural and historic resources and mentions historic sites, but most of the rest of that sentence is about environmental elements. Is that enough for us to say that we're going to acknowledge, we're going to figure out a way to address how we value and how we want to plan for the future, the preservation of historic sites in Abington?
It is really to depend upon the work of the team in determining how far they want to go with the historic element of the comprehensive plan. So it could be more specific, it could be more broad, it could be a statement of community objectives with respect to it. It's really going to be a determining factor of what does the development team want to recommend to the Board of Commissioners that should be in the comprehensive plan to meet that requirement of the Pennsylvania Municipalities Planning Code.
Okay.
So it's really going to be a work in progress.
Fair
So
enough.
correct me if I'm wrong, I think part of the initial part of the question that we had discussed was, what is the definition of what constitutes historic? What definition are you going to use as a historical piece of property or building or other designated historical item? I think that's the initial underlying question. Is that, am I?
I guess it says here, a plan for the protection of natural and historic resources to the extent not preempted by federal or state law. This clause includes, but is not limited to, wetlands, aquifer recharge zones, woodlands, steep slopes, prime agricultural land, floodplains, unique natural areas, and historic sites, historic lowercase h. I don't think we have a definition. It doesn't necessarily need to be in here, but I would, from my vantage point of what we heard in previous meetings, and what has, I think, come out in a couple of other conversations, like when we looked at Metaplex, there's some old buildings there that there were some people who spoke up about that as well. And our current comprehensive plan has no reference to whether or not we as a township value historic preservation and how we handle it. And so I think I'm asking the question of, is this enough here that we feel like, yes, this is included in it, that this committee will tackle that issue that's been brought to us in the past?
If the question is for the comprehensive plan development team to discuss and tackle the issue of historic preservation and the definition of it, yes, it would be enough. It would be up to the development team to decide how far they want to take it. Now, keep in mind, once you have the comprehensive plan, you also have the subdivision land development ordinance that ties back to it, the zoning ordinance which ties back to it, and everything which has to be done under the MPC, which is the overarching law that we have to comply with as a political subdivision of the Commonwealth. So long story short is, yes, it's enough to tackle it. As far as you want to go would be up to the group to recommend to the commissioners.
Sure. Okay, good. I do have a second question, and that is later in the section about meetings. Sorry, nope, it's not under meetings. It is. What section is this? One sec. It's right above meetings. I guess it's still under scope and duties, but towards the very end, it refers to the team shall conduct its work in such a manner as to advise the Board of Commissioners and submit periodic reports as requested by the Board of Commissioners. I think that's vague. And I think for the benefit of the committee, we might want to make it more clear how often those reports are so that it's not at the mercy of any commissioner asking for a report, that there's a expected frequency over the year that the committee is meeting, the team is meeting.
My only suggestion would be if you want to make it more specific that you say either no less than or no more than reports so that you don't get trapped into not getting more reports if you want more. So it's really what your desire is.
If I may,
Well, hold on.
No, you
Commissioner
go ahead. They're talking the same thing here.
sorry.
Go ahead. And then I'll come.
To address the last question, the schedule right now that we have put together and included in the package includes 3 separate report outs to the Board of Commissioners to discuss the progress of the report. and those are categorized by the sections of the report. So having that, it would go section 1 and 2, section 3 and 4, and section 5 and 6, et cetera. So we do have 3 reporting periods to tell the board where we are with things. We also have 12 community engagement sessions built in there, 3 categorized, and then 4 meetings each per category. So there's plenty of opportunity for the commissioners to check in and understand where we are with things. And then when we have the work sessions, I think any commissioner is more than welcome to join, sit in, and participate.
I would just suggest, and as I may have expressed before, it's just a little bit easier to just do it. I know you have the 3 reporting requirements, but I would just do it on a quarterly basis or something that way, and you can just kind of build on each quarter. That would be my suggestion, but I'm open to.
Just 2 things. And Commissioner Carswell, just to be more clear, it was designed to be broad, not vague, to give latitude to the commissioners or to the group. And in working with Commissioner Thompson, the idea was more around, let's report after work product is completed. And because you're dealing with volunteers and schedules, not knowing when that would occur, it was more, these are milestones, let's report back. And because in case we need feedback on the next steps and direction. So it was driven more by the work than it was a calendar.
So is this, towards the back half of that document, the schedule, is this fluid? Like this, or would this schedule be what we adhere to? Because what Commissioner Thompson said is that this schedule suggests how often those reports are happening. But if, because of the committee's ability to meet from time to time, that may mean that the schedule has to be fluid. My bringing it up is just to say, I'd like to save the committee the challenge of being asked to report more often than they're able to, or vice versa, a board that has no idea what's going on, just to have it be more clear what the expectation is. So when I asked the question, it was in the narrative, it says periodic reports, but in the schedule, it seems to be some set times for when they would happen.
Periodic meaning there could be more. So there are set schedules reporting. They're going to report out after that work product. But one of the reasons that I'm recommending that the chair of this development team be a member of the Board of Commissioners, knowledgeable in this area, is so that there is that link to what the Board of Commissioners want, knowing that commissioners are going to be talking to that individual. And then you'll get the reports at a minimum at those milestones. So if there's, if you would happen to attend the first, for example, if you would attend the first session that they were working on and something came up and you see it going in a different direction, I would expect that you would let myself know or Commissioner Thompson, or bring it up in a meeting and say, you know what, I was at the development team's discussions, some good points came out of that. Can we talk about this and in discussion and say, it might be good if we could have a report on this one aspect. That would be an example of how you might use the fluidity of the process to get an additional report or to have additional work added to the group. It's designed, and a real key to this is citizen engagement, to get out and engage the key stakeholders throughout the area, and to get out into the community and have these meetings where you get citizen engagement. And that's really why you kind of make it more broad, because you don't know what might come from that.
Commissioner Gillespie.
You kind of answered what I was going to say, and the team is who? I mean, who was, you kind of have, in your conversation just now, have kind of answered my question. People of the community or
What I would recommend,
volunteers or?
what I would recommend, and I know Commissioner Luker, when discussed this with Commissioner Luker, President Luker and Vice President Klein as well, one of the things that we talked about is who best to lead this from the board. And I think Commissioner Luker thought that Mr. Thompson would be the ideal person because of his background as an architect in planning and land use. And my recommendation would be that the board focus on the stakeholder backgrounds, that perhaps Mr. Thompson would think about who, in his experiences might fit that, bring a recommended list back to the board in June, and then the board consider if they're the right people or not, since he's going to chair that group. rather than going through an exhaustive process, because we're already, we really would like to get this done by July of next year, and I think a year for a township of this size is really kind of aggressive to try to get it all done. So that's, the who is going to be decided by the Board of Commissioners, as well as whether or not you want to take the suggestions on who the stakeholders should be. And again, there too, it's left broad. The environmental community, you know, the business community, the K through 12 community, you know, you might have different views. So my suggestion would be, if you agree to go with these stakeholders, you know, communicate to President Luker, and to, if in fact that is still your intent, President Luker, to appoint Mr. Thompson as chair of the team, to both of them as to suggestions as to who you think or what kind of people should be in those roles. And then you would vote on those people at your June meeting.
And I would,
thanks.
I would wholeheartedly, you know, invite you guys to submit individuals who you think belong on the team. I think one of the goals of this team is going to be to have a diverse group of team members that come from across the township, not just from one or two wards. So,
Are there any other Commissioner Spiegel?
Oh, just briefly, thank you, Commissioner Brodsky. Just want to say, I mean, obviously, this is a longstanding need and clearly defined goal, priority of the township and the Board of Commissioners. I'm very impressed with how the scope and duties were put together. I think that it offers the right amount of structure to set a direction for the team, but also the flexibility to be able to tackle some, you know, more broadly issues, exactly like the one that Commissioner Carswell brought up of historic preservation. Completely support the choice of Commissioner Thompson to be the team leader. He's young, but he's got a good head on his shoulders. I'm thoroughly in support of this.
Any further comment from commissioners? Mr. Weingarten.
Thank you. You're looking for a 9-member team. Why not more? Why not less? If we're looking for more participation, why not more?
The 9 members represent the various stakeholder groups within. And frankly, it comes down to how many members become too cumbersome in this type of group that you're creating, in the timeline you're creating it in. So those 9 members are really 9 members who get a vote on what should be recommended. There are going to be a lot of people invited into the process at these various stakeholder meetings and other meetings that the development team will have. So won't be only 9 people, it'll be 9 people that are representing groups that'll have a vote in what gets recommended to the Board of Commissioners. Township of this size, if you go too large, it's hard to get consensus. If you go too small, you're not being representative. I thought 9 was a good number, candidly. It's worked elsewhere, and I think it makes sense here.
And if we're looking to complete this within, I guess it'd be July of 2020, and you said it's aggressive, that's an aggressive timeline. What if we're not completed? What do we do from there?
I have every confidence that it will be completed by then. It should be. I mean, if everyone does what's asked of them and stays on their timelines, and that's going to have to be a consideration in Mr. Thompson's recommendations to the Board of Commissioners, that the people who are selected are willing to commit to the time necessary to get the product finished.
in addition to, we'll be tracking the schedule, so at those 3 report outs to the Board of Commissioners, we will let you know if we're anticipating any kind of delay moving forward, and we'll address it at that time.
Fair enough. Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Klein.
So is this going to be part of the planning committee, the community assistance contract? Is that your plan, or are you going to have somebody else assist with it?
Part of it is going to be part of the community assistance. Michael Markowitz and I are going to be having a conversation about that, because we have to renegotiate it.
Right.
But yes,
And
the
then
short
we-
answer is in this year, in the short term, to make sure, that's why I broke up where the funding is coming from into 3 things. So the planning assistance contract would be a piece of it.
Right.
But if we start to engage more and more and more, there are other areas we will pull from. That's why I'm being transparent and saying where it's coming from.
And then the only other comment I would make is to consider having an official map drawn up at the same time we do the comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
It was one of the things that we did not do back in 2005 when we did the comprehensive plan, and it's something that should be done and would take advantage of all the studies and revitalization plans that we've put together and bike plans and whatever they may, walk, park, train, put them all on an official map so that they are something that we can hold development and infrastructure improvements instead of having to try to find them, so.
You mean like a GIS map?
Under the MPC, there's a thing called,
Official map,
something that's called an official map. Whether it's done GPS or not, it's something that the township would adopt as part of the comprehensive plan, which would designate those priorities and those studies and things that the township is looking to, everything from intersection changes, so that if we do ever incorporate some kind of transportation funding, we have there's a redevelopment project that happens, we can go to the official map and say this is something that the township has thought about and is something that would be part of your public improvements.
Right.
Instead of just trying to make it up as we go.
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, we've constantly been batting around this concept of GIS, and I think this is going to be an integral part of getting the GIS system really off the ground and running.
And just as an aside, we are moving forward with that right now.
Any other further comments from anybody else?
Only comment I want to make is to Commissioner Gillespie's. I gave you this long-winded, so I got a lot of this out there. I assure you that what's on your agenda a week from now will be condensed.
Okay, last call. Any further comments from anybody else? Any comments from staff? Any comments from public? Hearing none, let's take a vote on this. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Having heard all the ayes, it passes. Any public comment from any issues relating to administrative land use and administrative code and land use committee? Please state your name and address for the record. Please be reminded of our 3-minute speaking rule. It's 9 o'clock.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. As many of you are aware, one commissioner told residents that they have no zoning rights, and those rights rest in your basket. And I would like to make clear that that is not the intent of our law. Our laws were actually set up where zoning rights were very specifically laid out, and when somebody wanted to change them, they actually had to go through a variance procedure, and variances required hardships, and so they were difficult to change, and that protected the people who had bought the property next door to them. Not too many years ago, developers began to figure out that if you can change the whole ordinance for the township, why couldn't you change something for them? And so they began to use that with the text amendment and the map amendment. And that came about very quickly. The first few times it happened, nobody understood what the heck was going on. And we found very quickly that zoning rights were lost. That's not the intent of our law or our government. The people in the BET situation came before you and asked how those laws might be changed. The then chair of this committee argued with them and refused to provide a pathway for the laws that would protect the residents to be generated. And you are the people who generate those laws. So for instance, you know, if you're submitting a land development and you have to wait a year before you submit the same land development, that was not the case under the text amendment. That didn't fall under those same rules. So a law needed to be had. But without the cooperation from those of you right here, then the residents who elected you to represent them in the government the way they would like to have representation have none. And so I'd like to make that very clear. The BET situation was unbelievable to watch residents for 1.25 years be dragged through meeting after meeting, lawyers, research, community coordination, and then the minute that zoning was gotten, it was changed, and BET said, now we have the use by right to do this other thing, and we don't need your input. Okay, so not okay, and it is up to you folks to change that and to make our government what our government is supposed to be. And if you think that it's not, think about the things that will happen to your children when other issues like clean water, water quality, and all of those things affect them. It's up to us here in this room to change that model. Thank you.
Any other further comments? Thank you for your comments. Any other further comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Let's go. We're done. Thank you.
All right. It is my pleasure to call to order the May 1st, 2019 Township of Abington Public Affairs Committee meeting. And let us start with a roll call.
Commissioner Spielman,
Here.
Bowman,
Here.
Schreiber,
Here.
DePlacido,
Here.
Meyer,
Here.
Hey, everybody's here. Excellent. Now, the approval of the minutes. I will make a motion to approve the committee meeting minutes of March 6th, 2019, and I so move.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any changes? No changes. All in favor of approving? Aye. All right then. Minutes are approved. Having just come off of Earth Day and Earth Month, we have back-to-back presentations by complementary but independent but equally wonderful groups of volunteer residents for whom there is no Earth Day or Earth Month. Protecting our environment is a year-round commitment, as it should be for everyone. So I'd like to welcome first the Township Environmental Advisory Council for their annual report.
Okay, thank
Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yes.
You might be new to some of the folks here. I know you, but.
Okay, my name is Jim Webb. I'm the chair of the Environmental Advisory Council starting in January, I guess. I want to first thank Jen Sherwood for all the work that she's done for these many years.
Absolutely.
I'm absolutely standing on her shoulders as we move forward. So she is still working with the EAC as an associate member, and she's been helping me get ready and move this board forward. So, what am I doing?
You waved your hands in some way that I've never seen before.
That's fine. Yeah, it's not a problem. Okay, so it's getting late, so I'll move through quickly. We have, as you know, 7 members. This is our current group. Myself, I have my 3 of the backup singers here with me this evening. Karen, Khaki, and Jen.
Jen, you mentioned, yeah, she's very important.
But I would say that this is a very dedicated group. They have been, very dedicated and committed to our mission, and I'm very pleased to have been working with them for the last 4 years. So our objectives, of course, are to conserve natural resources, protect and improve the environment, advise you guys and gals, and we spend a lot of time educating the public. So these were our goals, the typical goals that we've had for a number of years, and we'd like to continue to operate and follow those as we go forward. You'll see later on our goals for this year. So number one is to enhance the sustainability of the township. I want to compliment our township manager. Mr. Manfredi has been working hand in glove with us over the last couple of months. He's asked Ashley to be a go-between with us and his office, and we appreciate that quite a bit. So if you've had a chance to look at our annual report, you'll see that STAR Communities program. You've probably seen that for the last couple of years. We were fortunate enough, the township is forward-thinking enough to have gone through the certification process and to have received a 3-star certification. The STAR Communities program has been taken over by the United States Green Building Council, and they have, the program is now called the LEED certification program. So we are working with Mr. Manfredi to see where we're going to go, if we're going to go forward with this, and if so, how we're going to go about it. And I my compliments to Khaki for all the work that she's put into it over the years. So the other thing that we look to do is our programs that we've been pushing for a while is the Shop Local program, particularly through the Go Green Rewards card. I would hope that you're familiar with that. Again, something that that's been developing over the last couple of years, reaching out to local businesses. They're offering discounts. When people come to our events, we punch their card for them. And when they get 10 points, 10 punches, they can then go to the businesses, and whatever discounts the businesses are offering, that's what they get. A little more information on STAR program. We assessed, all the various areas like economic, social, and environmental, and using it to really look at what areas can the township improve on, okay? And measuring that progress. We've worked with Penn State Abington, and as I mentioned, we are now transitioning, looking to transition into the U.S. Green Building Council lead for cities and communities. Just a little advertisement there to Shop Local, and that is a picture of the Go Greens reward card. So the next time you come to drop off your electronics at the recycling event, we'll punch your card for you. And if you drive up in a Prius, you'll get the whole card punched, I promise you. I'll get into that a little bit more later. Okay, one of the big things, as I'm sure you know, is we've spent a lot of time working on, with the township on the MS4 program and the rain barrel project. And that is one of the areas we've invested a lot of our time and effort into. So we have, I think it's 5 or 6 rain barrel workshops this year? Yes. And there is a schedule here in the presentation. You'll see when there. Some of them have occurred already, and others will be happening throughout the year. So that's public outreach. We've had volunteers, scouts, both Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts have helped us for their service projects to construct the rain barrels. Some of them even we've had students do some of the art barrels for us. So very great opportunity for them to be involved. As you probably know, our rain barrels are significantly cheaper than what you would pay at a Lowe's or a garden store. I got a shed this year, and I'm waiting for my 2 barrels to arrive at my house. Should be there any day now. Again, you can see some of the partners that we've worked with. So this year, the stats are, we placed another 130 barrels this year. We had 7 workshops, 100 attendees, again, over 600 hours of effort, volunteer effort, and pretty impressive numbers there in terms of how much stormwater is actually captured. Almost a 2% increase from last year coverage of how many households in Abington actually are covered with rain barrels. Okay. Over the years, we've worked to build rain gardens, worked with some of the other, the TTF group, and then the Wissahickon Valley Watershed Association. We're working with them on some projects. And some of the schools, we've built rain gardens and other stormwater runoff programs. Our third area of interest is, of course, protecting open space through cleanups projects and maintenance of those projects, as well as planting and caring for trees. Just a little more detail on some of the partners. You can see down the bottom there some of the partners that we've been working with, including the Shade Tree Commissions, School District, and other EACs, and the Audubon Society. So there are some of the results from last year. 8 events, 203 volunteers, 532 hours, 26 acres cleaned up, about 750 pounds of litter, planted 30 trees, and 415 flowers. One of the things I noticed is that once you clean a park, they generally tend to stay relatively clean, which is a good thing. Set a good example, you know, people are less likely to leave a mess. So kudos to all the folks who have volunteered and I know, spend a lot of time at Rochester Park with the Boy Scouts, and I know the friends of the park there are very involved, and they keep an eye out and make sure that the park stays in good shape. So our final objective is to educate the public. As I mentioned, some of the workshops, the community events, flyers, displays, social media, things like we usually have a table at the pre-night out. These are some of the cleanup events that are coming and workshops. You know, we have our newsletter out about once a month or so that typically will lay out what our events are coming up. So the Montgomery Award, yesterday was the deadline for nominees for the Montgomery Award. I would encourage you to reach out and be cognizant of people in your wards that are doing good things, environmental-wise, and keep them in mind next year when we call for the Montgomery Award. Some years it's a little light, let's just say, in getting nominees. But there's a lot of people out there doing a lot of good work. So if you can keep that in mind, we would appreciate it. Give us a little competition, make it a little harder on us when we have to vote. So as you can see, we have a couple more rain barrel workshops coming up. And as I said, we usually have a table at the pre-night out. Pretty successful last year. I think we got quite a good stop and drop, say hello, and we had a neat little pool full of muddy water from the from the fire engine, and the kids had a great time playing in that. As you know, the township is an Audubon bird town. We've been funding that through our Rain Barrel and Green Fund, and through the native plant sale events. And the bird walks happen quite frequently in the good weather. Is it twice a month, Jen? Twice a month, starting at different parts of Lorimer Park. And you can earn Go Green rewards if you attend. This was the winner this year of the Montgomery Award, or I should say in 2018, June Parkinson, and June created and cares for the garden at the Keswick Avenue train underpass. Things we're looking to do in 2019, continue to look towards the community's health and environment. You know, whenever you think about what is our basic mission for the EAC, that's it. The community's health and environment, and that's what we should always have in the front of our minds. Looking to enhance sustainability by exploring resources that are available through the Global Covenant of Mayors. We're looking to adopt, you'll be hopefully seeing a little bit more about this, adopting the Montco Ready for 100. That's looking for townships around in this area to be 100% carbon free by the year 2050. And as well as investigating what other townships are doing with green building incentives. As I mentioned, we're looking to pursue that Green Building Council LEED certification. We're going to raise our goal for diverting stormwater up to 1.9 million gallons. If another 100 barrels this year, we can get that done. And we want to take a look at the Go Green Rewards program, see how efficient, how is it really working? Is it working well or not? And we're always looking for more volunteers. We're always trying to figure out how to get more people out with the cleanups. So I think this is the last one. Yeah, and I know a lot of you do this, a lot of you include our events in your newsletters. We do appreciate that, gets folks out. Anytime you contact us and you want to partner with us, we'll do our best to be a part of that. More than welcome to come to our meeting next Wednesday, or any of our meetings. After Senator Haywood's meeting, environmental meeting he held here was about a month ago, more or less, a number of folks came. We held our meeting at 8 o'clock instead of 7:30, and a number of people came and attended, and it was a really good discussion. We had a lot of new faces we hadn't had before, and that new faces, new ideas will help us do a better job. Second Wednesday every month, 7:30, and we have our webpage on our Facebook, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Just to point out to people, folks can go ahead and use that email address, eac.abington@gmail.com, to sign up for the great EAC newsletter. Yes? That's how people would sign up? Excellent. Good. I steal a lot of stuff from my newsletter,
That's
from that.
perfectly fine. Steal as much as you want.
Any commissioners have any questions for our friends from the EAC? Mr. Webb, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Very much appreciated. Certainly a tough act to follow, but if there's anyone who can, it is the backbone of the Shade Tree Commission, the legendary Dr. Rita Stevens.
Everybody stand up, stretch, look like a tree.
My legs fell asleep an hour and a half ago.
There you go.
Oh, there we go.
And then just click.
Thank you, Ashley.
My clicker. Or I can just. Which one? Okay. All right.
Dr. Stevens, welcome.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me if I stand this close to the microphone?
I can hear you.
Okay.
Always do what I do. Always be loud.
All right.
You can't be loud
we'll,
enough.
We'll give a brief annual report of the Abington Township Shade Tree Commission here. Our one slide to give you an overview of the Shade Tree Commission and what we're about is we seek to preserve and enhance Abington's tree canopy. Canopy being, if you are a bird flying over the township, how much of the township is covered by trees. That is a collective canopy, and the essential ecosystems that trees uniquely provide. Just to give you an update on who, what, and where, the team is 5 of us that are appointed members, each for a 5-year term on a rotating basis by the Board of Commissioners. Right there with us are at least a dozen associate members at any given time, different areas of expertise, they come and go. We're really delighted to have a formal staff liaison of Andy Oles, Director in Parks and Rec. And since that's happened, it has totally streamlined our work. So I applaud that decision and Andy's dedication to the efforts here. Collectively, when you look at this team, it is broad and deep in professional expertise. I won't read this to you, but everything from arboriculture to planning, we really have all the pieces to bring this together to go after our canopy goals. And last but not least, having our base of operation at Grove Park has been phenomenal. Our first Arbor Day there was 6 years ago today, and when I look back at our Tree City USA, which is where we do our metrics now for 12 years, we just have a bump up in every category since we have had the privilege of operating in a physical facility where we can be planting trees and carrying tree-related projects for the community. So if you don't take anything else away at this late hour, the star there, our big priority is to maintain the sustainable canopy coverage. There's lots of different research out there and community-specific type of data, but remember, 40% canopy coverage is what is the recommendation by the American Forest for our kind of suburban community. And what gives us pause is while we're probably about 40% on average, half of our township is closer to 50, and the other half of our township ranges as low as 10% when you look at ward by ward. So we have a real need to be attending to this canopy coverage. I can wax on forever, but just one, the second bullet there, one way to think about, well, why do we want to do this is dollar for dollar, trees outperform man-made environmental solutions. And you can get to all kinds of different case studies, but remember that if you do it right, you can get $4 back for every dollar you put in from a municipality. So it's a really good payback on it in terms of not only the infiltration of stormwater, clean air, clean water, but also property value, carbon sequestration, energy costs. It goes on and on in terms of what these benefits add up to be. I've been at this for 12 years on the Shade Tree Commission, and it just has become more and more clear to myself as well as my colleagues on the Shade Tree Commission that the key to getting there are these three pieces that I've got starred. We really need to be watching after our large stature mature trees because it's the big trees that give us the biggest benefits. Secondly, that because trees don't last forever, we need to be tree planting and establishing new trees. We need to be reforesting, so to speak. And currently, we are losing our trees by the metrics that we keep. The kinds of things is we are not planting as many trees as we are taking down on our public lands. You know, we do count for our Tree City USA application. We have all the threats of the invasive vines, the emerald ash borer, the Asian longhorn beetle, going after our things, and basically that on top of having heavy deer populations who are they love eating small twigs, we are not getting a regeneration at the way we want to get. So we also have to be doubling down on our tree planting, and once we plant them, take care of them so they establish themselves and grow into the big guys. And then last but not least is we need to remember that an awful lot of what goes on for trees is going on underground. When we make our decisions about what we do with our land use, how we develop, where we put things, we really need to be thinking about preserving suitable sites for growing trees. And the place that best happens is when you're way back in the planning mode. So there's my pitch in terms of what we're after. What I'd like to do is I've just got 3 more slides of content and give you our strategy on a page, and then what we've done in 2018, what we've done in what we want to do in 2019. So a lot to read here. Kind of just pay attention to the red underline, but. What we've done for a number of years is we, in the December and January timeframe, step back because it's gotten a little bit quieter from all of our tree planting activities, and we formally develop our strategic plan that we look about 2 to 3 years out. And we have been successful for a number of years using these categories. So if you look back at our history, we look at each of these areas and say, what have we done, what can we do, what needs to be done? And so these are the definitionals. Like in the planning, we really need to be thinking long-term planning. We got to be thinking 20 years ahead, and then making sure that we have trees and room to grow them, and then bring that down to the operational level for the coming 2 or 3 years. We then, operationally in stewardship, we really are very active in identifying and prioritizing tree safety issues. Safety is of essence to make sure that no one is getting hurt with improperly placed or maintained trees, but also then the preservation and planting that we need to be getting to and sustaining our canopy. Our outreach has been very much the right tree, right place. Again, this all goes back to the very beginning. If you plant the right size tree in the right place and prevent conflicts with trees from happening, then you get the biggest benefits out of them. And we are really seeking to help every resident in this community understand the right tree, right place, as well as proper taking care of them so that everyone can be making sound decisions about trees. Standards is just incredibly important to us. Again, I've said we've got to do trees right, and that's where you get your payback. There are excellent reduced to practice arboriculture industry standards and best management practices, and we seek to use those in everything that we do in giving timely and professional review for any particular land development application or other matter that is sent our way. Engagement is one that we continue to figure out. There is a balance of participation here. When we have a volunteer group, we have an excellent staff. We also need to have every single property owner recognizing how they can impact this. And I think as we work on like who to involve at what level, as well as how do we fund this, that becomes the resource pool for how do we accomplish and ultimately get to this. So a lot of definition. Let's just hit the big highlights from 2018, and there's a lot to be happy here. I just threw up a couple of our basic measures. As I mentioned, for Tree City USA, every year that we do put in a formal measure of what we have done the previous year. Just to kind of give you an idea, we as a township spend about $10 per capita on all things trees. It's about $540,000. $280,000 of that is leaf composting. So recognize the composting is a big piece of that, but a very important one. 1,100 volunteer hours in 2018. As far as planning, we have identified the city of Lakewood, Ohio as a very good comparable to what we want to be when we grow up 20 years from now in terms of our street tree program. And so we did a good amount of benchmarking of what they're doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, that is going to be guiding us going forward. A real win for outreach this year is that while we have had smaller projects from year to year with Abington School District, we have now begun working with the junior high science department to create a experimental forest, and we're putting together a 5-year plan so that there, in essence, will be an outdoor classroom on the junior high property with our expectation that we will do the first installation this fall. So successional planning and getting our students involved in understanding and experiencing a growing forest. So onto the stewardship category, again, it's around tree preservation, tree planting. On the preservation, we have 2 amazing projects. I cannot thank you enough for the years of supporting us in the work in Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary, which is now in construction. So the Forest Restoration and Nature Trail, which is funded by the C2P2 grant, the trail is in, it's being surfaced this week. Probably we have several months worth of planting but by the end of this calendar year, we want to have the interpretive signage up. And I think you're going to find it an incredible new front door for Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary, as well as an incredible place of respite and education for our community. Also in Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary, the Edgehill Tyson project, which we've got 3-4 years maybe worth of consult of how to bring the water through the woods, and we are doing it, and we are doing it in an amazingly sustainable way. I'll have a picture later, you'll get to see the team, but lots and lots of planning, lots and lots of go out and tree inventorying and surveying and figuring out the best way to infiltrate water, and we're doing it, and it is going to be beautiful. So I think by the end of this year, we're going to have some really nice nature walks through Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary for you all. As far as engagement, I'd already mentioned just how important it has been to liaise with Parks and Recreation, but also I want to give a call out to there's probably half a dozen parks that are really forming up some nice friends groups that have done enough volunteering and tree tending that there is some good critical mass knowledge there. And I'd especially like to give a call out to Hollowell and to Rochester parks that are really like giving us our model for how do we want to replicate that across the other parks. Moving into standards, it was a busy year. You may recall that we had a 2018 Tree Vitalized Community Forestry Grant. It was the first year that Tree Vitalized offered that category, and we put in for a project which we were successful to get consulting arborists who deal with municipal code and municipal operations about what is the best way to operate in terms of, and we focused in on tree preservation and protection in particular. We have excellent language and an excellent recommendation for that we're now starting to work in a more detailed manner with the township staff, and I expect to hear some more about that as the year progresses here. And then finally, in the funding, we nailed it on managing our state grants, and we grew our private donations. We had significant increase in that. So 2018 was really a big year for us, and one that has given us a lot of energy for finally, oops, I'm gonna hit the right. Okay, what am I doing wrong on this? I must be done, huh? The down one, that, oh, or just right? I think you're right. Or you can use it. Oh, duh. Sorry, it's past all of our bedtimes, right? Okay, there we go. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so same categories, just real briefly as far, and this is my, my final song here. In terms of what we want to be doing is we really want to be a piece of this comprehensive plan. I look forward to seeing how it makes sense for us to participate there, but trees are integrated into everything, and if we don't get it right from the comprehensive plan, we will never get it right from the operational plan. So enough said. Stewardship, we are committed to finishing the Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary projects in good shape. We are holding in October, there is across the state a walk in Penn's Woods. We have gone ahead and registered Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary for that as a public walk so that we can really have a more formal celebration around the completion of these projects. And we will be kicking off this outdoor classroom at Abington Junior High, as well as our normal activities of just maximizing value from the Tree Vitalized bare root, which we tend to plant in the fall just because that's better for trees. Okay. Standards, outreach, I'd say outreach is one that we really would like to improve. I wouldn't say we're stellar in our communications end of things, and I think we're too busy out there in the field. And so we're starting to work with Ashley as well as considering an internship position to help us really leverage all of our strength and get to every resident in the township in terms of all things trees. Standards will continue and really invite you to test us at every turn on anything that we can do to help with your decision making with respect to trees and in decisions that you face, as well as to advance our work that we did with the grant base for getting tree standards for preservation, et cetera, and come back to you with a formal recommendation for what we might want to put into the code. Engagement, we really have seen such a great value in connecting with Parks and Recs. We want to strengthen our partnerships across all departments because tree decisions get made across the board, and also the Friends of Parks group, because it's the people that live by the trees that really make the trees live or die, and so glad for that. And then finally, funding, just a heads up on what we would like to be doing as far as our major grant writing is we're right in the midst of formulating a second application for a forest management grant, and we'd like to focus this on figuring out our street trees. You know that our street trees are probably about 30 years since the economic development went in, and they're in pretty good shape. But we recognize 20 years from now, there's probably going to be need for some succession planning, et cetera, and we want to get it right now in terms of thinking ahead. What should we be doing as these trees are mature, and what do we think in terms of managing for their future? So I think getting that grant will really go a long way to enhancing our capacity to get to that 40% canopy goal. The second of the third is we would like to start preparing right now. Believe it or not, you got to plan way in advance for these C2P2, but by the end of this year, be ready to apply in early 2020 to get a 2021 C2P2 to go to phase 2 for Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary. So we're just kind of thinking way ahead of, there's another perfect project there, but one that takes a good amount of discernment and planning to be able to successfully apply. And then last but not least is we have a good dialogue going with our regional, the Pendel ISA chapter, the International Society of Arboriculture. They do a day of service once a year where they bring in many arboriculture companies with big equipment to tend big mature trees, and they really like to focus on cemeteries. So we're in dialogue with them to see if our combination of Hillside and Ardsley Burial Park would be a good place, and given that Ardsley Wildlife Sanctuary is right in the middle of it, it just makes sense in terms of not only managing 81 acres, but in essence, thinking of it's like 220 acres, I think, when you look at that together. So that's what we're after, lots of excitement. I just cannot thank you enough for the support that you have given us, and I know that you will continue to give and to care for trees. So a couple little slides with some pictures, just some sampling of some tree people. We continue to get all kinds of great people out there doing it. And once, if you've never done this, come out for an hour on one of our events. Like, you learn so much about trees, it's unbelievable. We're all in this together. You know, we have all kinds of teams of ages and persuasions. And I'll just thank you for caring for trees and leave you with a vision that may we have big huggable trees in our future.
Thank you so much, Dr. Stevens.
Okay.
Really, very much appreciated. Thank you for everything that you do.
So,
Commissioner, could I make a comment?
Please.
Thank you. Rita, I really, really appreciate what you did with the Edge Hill Road Tyson Avenue project in the cemetery. That was wonderful. Well, you know, to just make it natural instead of a trough going down to, you know, detention basins. So thank you. I know
you.
it took a little bit of extra time, but I think it was well worth it. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. I share in your excitement. Thanks. Okay, good.
Commissioner Thompson, did you?
Oh, actually, I just wanted to give a big shout out to the Shade Tree Commission and the EAC for showing up at Doherty Park this weekend for Arbor Day. It was a good celebration. You know, it was sunny. The weather didn't quite cooperate. It was really windy, but we did manage to get a few trees in there, and it fostered a lot of pride in the park. The next day, Friends of Doherty Park Facebook page popped up. So hopefully we can get into a better Friends organization for that park. So yeah, keep your eyes on us.
All right.
And thank you. Thank you for the help.
Welcome. Right.
Thank you
Good
again.
evening.
All right. All right, we have, besides my dinner, we have no unfinished business, so we are going to move on to the one item of new business. This is I think it's primarily going to be a matter for discussion. It is PA-01-050919. Consider and discuss Hunter Soccer Club's proposal and request to improve and lease the upper field in Penburn Park to be an artificial turf field. And before we call on our visitors from Hunter Soccer, I just wanted to see if, Commissioner Thompson, I know you've been working really hard on this just in the lead up to the beginning of this conversation. If there's anything you'd like to say to start us off.
Well, frankly, I think we need to hear from Hunter to understand what you're presenting and proposing, and then I think we'll have a pretty robust discussion after their...
Sounds good. Should we, I'm thinking maybe we should tell everybody so we all start off on the same page, that information I know you kindly shared with me regarding land development. Do you want to say something about that?
Yeah, we did I think it was today or yesterday, we learned that this application will also have to go through the subdivision and land development process, so this won't be the last time that this is before the board.
Indeed. All right, then, without further delay, because it is late, let's call up our friends from Hunter Soccer. If you could introduce yourself, name and address.
Yes, I'm William Manchester, president of Hunter Soccer, and
I'm Ross Ledane. I'm with Keystone Sports Construction. Just joining.
he's answering the tough questions. I could just start off by giving you guys the proposal that we're looking to do. Hunter Soccer's 2,000 kids. We spend probably about, well, I know because I went back and audited the last 5 years, roughly $80,000 a year on field rentals, lights, cutting the grass, and fertilizing, and we resod it twice, Pembroke Park. So it's impossible to continue doing this. The resod, it lasts 2 years at max. And when we resod it, no one can play on it in the spring because it's got, we usually plant it in the spring and no one in the summer. So it's down. So it's 2 years, but 2 seasons it's not being used. Right now our club is growing at a fast rate. By putting the turf field in, we could run games for, go back to the 2,000 kids. Out of the 2,000 kids, 1,400 of them are under the age for a 9v9 field and a 7v7 field. So the plan with Abington Parks, I guess years ago, was to move all around fields at Pembroke Park. They designed it, the civil engineers came in and did it all. When the board came to me with this, I basically told them it's never going to happen because we got to go through all of this. The simplest way to do this is turf the upper field. The lights are there. The fence is 3/4 of the way around. We don't have to pay for the part of the fencing to close it in because the turf field has to be closed in. That being said, we went out and we found Keystone. I looked at several different turf companies. Keystone was the best that we decided to pick on. The board voted on it, we picked them. When we looked at this, I said, how can we finance this? And of course, I have board members that are saying, let's go to the township and ask them for money. And once again, I said, that's not going to happen. We have to pay for this ourselves. We have to come in front of the board and say, look, this is our plan. We're looking to pay for it. How do we do it? Well, we've raised enough money through our Jack Walsh tournament over the last 5 years. We're the largest tournament on the East Coast right now, soccer tournament. So with that, those funds will be able to fund a lot of this. I went out and found financing, and the financing we can afford now. What I'm asking the board is to give us the next step saying go for the approval of the turf. Whereas that's where these guys will come in is talking about the land development and stuff like that. Go through the proper procedures. But I don't want to waste anyone's time if this is never going to happen. So the second thing is when we look at this, we're probably a cash flow problem where we can solve it is we've been around since 1962, Hunter Soccer. We've been using that field since probably 1963. We have the permits, we always play on it. I'm looking to just sublease this field after we build the field for 4-5 years. As soon as the loan is paid off, it now becomes, well, it's always going to become township property, but I will stop leasing it. And the idea there is I went through and we right now, like I said, we spend about $80,000 in rentals right now, and we also travel 30 minutes, 40 minutes to get to these fields. So in doing this, there's a lot of opportunity around here that people would say, they would jump on it. I already talked to all the presidents of other clubs. They're like, we would do it. We would pay. And there would be a discount to Abington residents. So in doing that, I only needed a cash flow of probably about $2,000 a month which is not that much because in the spring, it would be utilized much more for GYAC, the tryouts and stuff like that. I've talked to them about that. So I have all the details on the financing. I think the biggest issue is, A, can we go forward with this? As far as planning, as far as getting these guys to come with the right, start applying for the permits and all that with the civil engineers. There's a lot of debate or discussion on, the field drainage and all that. I will address all of that. We have answers for all of that. I'm just not the expert on that. I'm the expert on the financing. I'm the expert on Hunter Soccer Club, the dire need of it. You guys all saw our weather last year. We had 4 games last year, out of 10. So this is something that's going to happen in Abington Township. It's going to happen eventually. We're the last to do it. A lot of the townships have already done it. Springfield High School's already putting 4 fields in theirs. They're talking about Carson Valley doing one. So it's out there. We've got everything in line. I just need the permission to lease it and the permission to go forward.
All right. I think people are going to have a lot of questions. I know I do. I'm going to start off with a couple and then open it up because I know a lot of people have questions. Actually, Manager Manfredi or Solicitor Clark, this might be a question for you. Mr. Manfredi, we spoke a little bit about this, but going into the Saldo process, who, if this moves forward to that stage, who would be the applicant? Because, the township owns the field.
We had this discussion today. I'll let Mr. Clark take it, but we believe it would be, why don't you just take it?
We believe that the soccer club would be the appropriate applicant.
Okay.
It'd be the same situation where an applicant has not actually purchased property, but they're considered the equitable owner.
Okay.
So they would be the most proper applicant.
All right.
And there is some incidents like that in the township now, correct? That you sublease? I think there's a library or so, that some part, I was told that.
I'm not aware.
I know
any
the
subleases.
school district subleases the Memorial Field Complex to Penn State Abington, but that's a different entity, so.
And the reason that it would be land development is the way the ordinance is written, with them being the applicant and with there being leases in place, that's what puts it through land development. If this was us making this improvement to this field, it'd be a different story.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to
Just to be
clarify
clear.
that. As I said, I have a bunch of questions, but I really want to give everybody a shot. So let's start with some folks on the committee and then broaden that a little bit. Commissioner Myers.
Thank you. Actually, not really a question. I'd like to hear from our director, Parks Director, Andy Ellis, on his feelings on this. Having no children, I really don't know anything about soccer fields. So it sounds like a very interesting thing to do, and you're saying it's being done in other places, and the leasing part is a little interesting. But Andy, I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on this.
The leasing, I'm going to let that handle with the legal, but the field, turf fields, the weather is exactly what he said. You lose a lot of seasons. We lost a lot, not just in Abington, but across both counties, in Bucks and Montgomery County. So a turf field would give you more longevity as far as playing time. You'd be able to play through more weather, which would extend seasons and not have kids not playing. You'd also have a facility that would last, I think the timeframes are 10, 15 years before resurfacing. On surfacing. So you're going to have a solid facility at the end. This field in particular in Pembroke is uniquely just a soccer field. It's not shared between softball, baseball, 3 organizations, like a lot of our fields in the parks. So it is a unique, small field. It's not a full-size soccer field. Like he was saying, it's mostly geared towards, as you can see from the picture, for your smaller 9v9, 7v7 youth. So it's not a full-size soccer field. So you're not going to have the impact of some of the bigger organizations. High schools won't be able to use it. It won't meet the regulations. So, I mean, and at the end of the day, it would become a township facility. After their proposed lease. I mean, it always will be, but it's something that we'll have. It won't go away at that point.
And our clubhouse is there. I don't foresee us ever going anywhere either. And we work with Pembroke Pool. I mean, I see them using that in the summer a lot for their camps and stuff like that,
So talking about the turf field, I know when the school district built the stadium, they have everything short of armed guards keeping anyone but the football team and occasionally the marching band at prescribed times from touching that stadium. And I've always been told it's because the repairs are very expensive on turf fields. I would assume that you've probably factored that in for the lease period, but I mean, I'm assuming you would be prepared to take care of all of that maintenance during the lease period, and then afterwards it would revert to us.
Well, I'm going to let him answer that, but I want to just say one thing too. We also, by doing this, we're taking that responsibility to maintain this field. We've been maintaining that field since 1970. So I can't foresee us ever stopping, because we're the only ones playing there. We're going to have to buy a machine to fluff the turf, and I'll let him get into that. But we're going to have the machine in the garage, so we'll do it, I mean, it's on us.
Gotcha.
So the biggest thing is that all turf fields and all various turf companies have warranties. Those warranties not only cover the product, but the actual installation, so that actual product and the facility can be utilized for what it's supposed to be utilized for. Some of our competitors have provisions in their warranties that state certain amounts of use. Ours does not. So a lot of that burden in which that you've referenced would be on us as the turf company. So, and the way that our warranty is written is it's all the way through from the product to the installation. So that would be something that I don't think in the long term would be as big of a concern, especially after seeing the warranty language.
Gotcha. Any other questions right now from folks on the committee? Commissioner Schreiber.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a few questions. Environmentally, I don't know anything about this. What's the impact of having turf rather than just what you would normally have there?
There's tons of benefits. So biggest thing is reducing carbon footprint. So you're not out there mowing constantly, you're not out there watering it constantly, you're not out there fertilizing, seeding, using antifungals, or any of these various things that can have an environmental impact associated to that area and runoff into other areas. You're utilizing a system that basically infiltrates faster than a normal grass field would. So runoff isn't typically a concern. You're something that is basically there and there to stay. So you're not in that situation where I think a lot of people think of an environmental impact to a synthetic item impacting an ecosystem. This doesn't. And that's why if you look through basically our area as a whole, Mid-Atlantic/Northeast area, we're one of the most densely populated synthetic turf areas in the country and continually growing. So from an environmental standpoint, I mean, there have been agencies that have looked at it and those studies or interests have never held up.
What about safety?
From a safety perspective, one of the most dangerous things to an athlete is an inconsistent playing surface. So when you have a natural grass field that isn't properly maintained or wet, you have deviations in the subgrade. So what ends up happening is a lot of people think about head impact and concussion protocols and various things that are highlighted via professional sports because these are athletes that have surfaces in which that are maintained at a professional level on a daily basis. With your local community parks and high schools, we don't have that. So when you have extreme use and abuse to a natural grass field, you're starting to get divots, dents, all of these various things that people aren't paying attention to and become ACL tear issues, MCL tear issues, traction issues, above ground collisions. So what a lot of people don't pay attention to is in the sports world, most of the concussions that actually happen on a field are above the actual surface. of players colliding with one another. And if a player can't stop and doesn't have ample traction, which a synthetic turf field does offer, there are issues to be had there. One of the other big benefits is synthetic turf fields don't freeze. So we're able to offer a uniform shock attenuation across the entire surface, while a natural grass field, if that becomes moist and then freezes, you've got a rock-hard surface that's harder than, it's just as hard as the pavement out there. So there are a lot of various benefits from a safety perspective that you have a much more controlled, uniform situation in which that, is very clearly outlined.
One last question. I want to make sure I understand. So Hunter would be using the field part of the time, and then when you're not using it, you're renting it to other places? So what's the ratio?
Right,
How much?
it's not that much because we play soccer all year round. So, we have 20 teams in the spring. We have, including intramural, over 200 teams in the fall. So, so we use it quite a bit. So when I look at the leasing it out, it's just for a cash flow, and I would say it'd be summertime, other than the Penburn camp, that we always share with them, the clubhouse.
Well, I guess that was my concern. Would you be making, you have it, that's going to be your cash flow to pay off the loan?
When
You'll
I
have
say
enough
cash
time?
flow, I'm talking about we average about $60,000 in the bank. When that gets to 40, I'm concerned. And that's where I'd say, hey, let's reach out to, I'm making a name up, Jenkintown, and see if these guys want to rent the field for a day or two, and let's grab $1,000 or $2,000, stuff like that. But I want to be upfront about it with you guys, saying this is what I'm thinking. It's a way to help me keep that above that 40,000, 50,000 range, because I don't want to get into trouble where the whole point of here is we're a nonprofit. So, and we try never to raise our rates, and we're one of the cheapest out there. So right now, that was my big concern to the board, was I don't want to raise the rates. Maybe I can do a $10 surcharge per year, per kid, something like that, and that'll raise, $20,000 or something like that. But that's about it. I don't want to come back to the parents and say, hey, you pay $105, guess what, it's $200 now, because we have a turf field. That's what I'm trying to avoid, and in my plan, my financing, I have that covered.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Commissioner Bowman.
So you mentioned the lease, you would need the lease for the period connected to the financing, is that, do you need?
What the idea was, let us sublease out, I'm calling it sublease, but let us be able to say, hey, Jenkintown, if you want to use the field, it's $125 an hour, you can do it. If it's I've already talked to Abington Lacrosse. They're very, Sam McGee, with all of them were way on this. They were like, we would pay. We're driving to Warminster. We're driving to Quakertown. If we can go there.
And that would be until your debt is retired?
Yeah, once the debt's retired, there's no, I have no reason to rent it.
Okay.
Like I said, we're a nonprofit, so it's not a money-making thing, it's just to pay off the debt. That's strictly what I'm trying to do.
I like the idea, so I support it.
Thank you.
Let's open it up to the whole board. Commissioner Carswell, and then Commissioner Klein, and then Commissioner Gillespie.
So I've been on the board here since September, and I will tell you, everybody here, that my children played Hunter last year, and I have another one playing again this year. But I have some questions about the relationship, because you are a nonprofit and we are a public government agency. I'm concerned about what our existing relationship is, as you have a building and this field is this field currently exclusively used by the league? Or is it-
By Hunter
Yes.
exclusively? We've had the permits every year. We apply for the permits every year, but like I said, since 1970. Ralph Bocchino has been the president for 35 years, and I know he's been using that field for 35 years.
And is it?
And like I think Andy mentioned, it's a unique spot. You know, it's not like the lower Pembroke where the two fields are. I mean, you know, a softball field, and we play our intramural down there. Up there, you really can only play soccer. You can't play football either up there.
So is the relationship between Hunter and the township set up through these permits? Or is there, because you also have the building, do you have a lease agreement or
Yeah,
some sort of
all that's
contract?
through, yeah, we paid for the building, we did all that. That's years past, I don't know the details. But the building's been ours since day one.
Ours as in you paid for the construction or that you
Yeah.
own the land? That's what I'm trying to understand. because
Yeah,
this is all new to me.
Abington Township owns the land. It's park, it's Pembroke Park. There's no doubt
Right.
about that. But
Who owns the building?
I guess Hunter does. I tell you the truth, I don't know.
So can I just say that I don't feel comfortable moving forward with this until some of this stuff is clarified for all of us. And I realize I may be the only one here as the newer person. I'll throw Stuart under here with me, but
Andy can probably answer
And
the
if you can
question.
answer any of these questions now, by all means.
So the Hunter building Hunter built that, and I know the township, back when they did it, was a partner in that with some of the, I believe, some of the sewer work on that. The whole thing is, if Hunter ever leaves, that building becomes a township facility, as it is. Realistically, Hunter is not leaving. I mean, their history here and their relationship with the township and the Parks Department in particular has always been a very amicable relationship. We share a lot of things, we work together on everything. But the building is primary, and it's not a big building, I don't know if you, I mean, it's a small.
I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, meeting room and things like that, and a storage garage, and, but it's pretty much, they use it, they lend it to us for some programs and things like that, but ultimately, if they ever leave, it's a township facility.
When was that built?
I don't remember the exact date, but it's been
It was before, I've been on the board for at least 10 years, so, and it was well before I was.
I was going to say 10, about 10 years ago.
so there's, sorry if I'm sounding like I'm beating a dead horse here, but is there a contract or a written agreement of some sort that expresses what our relationship is between the township and Hunter?
I can look at it.
Yeah, I don't
I'm
know.
pretty sure there is, I just have to dig back through the files.
I think that's a really, maybe I'm turning to my
Yeah,
fellow
but
commissioners.
here's the.
I think that's really important that we have
that's
that
fine,
for
and
your
we
sake
could-
and for ours.
That's fine, that we bring that up and we get that accomplished, but I'm here about the turf field.
I understand.
You know, so
I bring it up because I think as public fields that have been used by a nonprofit, I think for your sake, for liability reasons and for ours, there should be an agreement.
there is no liability. We use the field, we've used the field since 1970. We have insurance. So I don't understand what you're saying.
And every athletic organization does provide us, the township, with a certificate of
We have
insurance,
to
naming
apply
the
for all
township as
that.
additionally insured, hold harmless. So when we do the permits for not just Hunter, but for every organization that uses all of our fields, GYAs, you know, whoever it might be. So certificate of insurance naming us as an additionally insured, hold harmless, and things like that. And we do that we renew those permits every year. And Hunter has had that permit, I mean, the 16 years I've been here, and probably 10 more on top of that, consistently. I mean, I hope
Okay.
that answers.
Can I turn
some-
to the solicitor and ask a question about this? Am I asking a question that doesn't make sense here? I feel like
No, your question
liability is, I'm not a lawyer, but I do feel like liability is a reasonable piece of this, and it is not to, I'm not trying to push off this project, I'm trying to ask a question I think that needs to be addressed before we move forward with future, longer-term agreements. I mean, this field would be in place for, you said, I think, 10 to 15 years, and then replacement and whatever. I mean, it's extending a relationship that I think should be documented. So can I turn to you, solicitor, to help me out here a little?
Sure. Your question makes complete sense. I will preface it by saying I've never seen any of the insurance certificates or any agreements between Hunter and the township, so I don't know what's in place. But as a landowner, it doesn't matter whether or not they have insurance. There are liability issues that we have because we are the ultimate landowner. So they can name us as an additional insurer, they can have a hold harmless, but it's our property, and we have liability because it's our property.
Which is true now and true 10 years ago. Nothing's changing.
Couple of quick questions. You asked 2 questions. This was paid for. The building that you asked about was paid for by Hunter. And apparently there is an agreement, and we will find that agreement and get it to the board on that building. With respect to this discussion and the solicitor's answer, you hear the word lease bounced around. The reason you see it as lease in front of you is because of what he just said. We would not just allow, the field to be constructed and continue to be used under a permit. It would have to be leased with everything that you're talking about. All the insurance provisions, liability, indemnifications would have to be in that lease agreement if you were to move forward. So it is a pertinent question.
Commissioner Klein, Commissioner Gillespie, then Commissioner Bowman. Commissioner Klein.
So you're talking about, the lease, you're not actually looking to pay the township anything for the lease. You're gonna take ownership or take control of the field and collect.
We're gonna buy a $700,000, $600,000 field.
Right.
And pay for it with some of the money. And then it's the township's $700,000 improvement.
In your plan here, who's in control of permitting the field?
Who's in control of the permit?
Who would be in control of permitting the field during the 5-year lease period?
Who, as far as collecting the funds and stuff like that?
Who would be in control of permitting the field during the 5-year period of time?
Hunter would be in control if we're subleasing it out.
So you're subleasing it out and taking control of the permitting.
Well, no.
You had mentioned that the field is.
It would be on our time. I mean, if another team comes up, which hasn't happened, and that's why I'm using this field since 1970, that has applied for a permit there, then there would be a discussion, but it hasn't happened.
Who?
So we're the only club that uses this field.
You mentioned that the field is 3 sides are encompassed by a fence. Would you be fencing in the 4th side?
Yeah.
And would you be controlling access to the field? So it would no longer be a public field?
Why wouldn't it be public field?
Well, right now, somebody can go out there and play soccer on that field if it's not being used, correct?
No, actually, we put signs on there all the time saying don't use, because we just spent $30,000 returfing it.
I understand that you may put a sign up there, however, it's still a
Well,
public.
what am I going to do? I'm not the police.
Please allow me to finish my
let's-
question.
Right,
It's still a public field, correct?
right, absolutely.
So kids on a Saturday or a
On a
Sunday
Saturday there,
please let me
it-
finish my question.
It's going to happen.
Are not going to, and the field's not being used, can go on there with a soccer ball and kick it around, correct?
I would say if they're not doing damage and they're just kids playing soccer, yeah, I would love to see that.
Would they be allowed to do that with the turf field?
I see no reason if they're playing soccer. If they're riding their bikes on it, no.
Would the field be open for them to do that? Or would the field be locked only if somebody has a
There's not
valid
going to be
permit?
really a lock. I mean, it's going to be a 3-foot fence. And if you don't want the fence, we don't have to have the fence.
Well, that's what I'm trying to understand, what the access to the field is going to be. There,
The access to the
Commissioner
field-
Spiegelman talked about the fact that the school district entered into an agreement with Penn State Abington to redo the Memorial Fields. And I will tell you that there's been several complaints about the field being locked up and not used like it was before.
And I know,
And I want to,
I'm in on that. I've been in on the Penn State. I've sat in those meetings. That is not how this is going to happen. I want the township to own this. I want the township kids to play on it. I'm not here to say we spent $700,000, no one else can use it. I'm just asking, can I pay the loan back? And that's it. I'm not trying to say Hunters.
So you're envisioning that this field will still be an open field to be used if it's not permitted and not being used?
Absolutely.
Can be used by the public?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, we're going to continue applying for that permit that we've done for the last so many years. So I'm just being realistic that we're not going to stop getting that permit. We're going to still apply for that permit.
Understood.
But yeah, if we don't have the permit for some strange reason, or
there's-
we lose 2,000 kids, it's open.
But there's also an issue in the township where soccer clubs and other athletic clubs, and I'm not saying that Hunter does this, they get permits for fields, and then they preclude other people from using those fields. If they see somebody or one of the members in that club sees somebody using that field and they have a permit for it, although they're not going to use that field at that time, we'll have those people taken off the field.
Yeah, and I'm part of all of that. I've been in those arguments and sat down with other presidents, and so I'm not about that. Everything's on the table. If a club wants to use it, they call me. If GYAC needs to use it, they call me, and I say, absolutely. You know, we help each other out all the time. There's a different environment coming around now that, you know, it's not about me holding a field hostage. It's about how many kids can I get playing. And if it's another team from another neighborhood, I don't care. I just want kids playing on a good field and not saying every Saturday morning at 5 o'clock, you're not playing today because it's raining. That's it.
And so, okay, I appreciate you giving me the answers, and I appreciate the idea that the field will remain open to the public, and that would be something that would, if the board were to go down that direction, would be something that would be put into the lease agreement. So you're projecting out 5 years of you collecting permit fees, not the township collecting permit fees, and I understand the business model. That in 5 years, you'll have paid back what you need to finance the
Yep. Lower
field.
Moreland did theirs in
What's your
1 year.
envisionment after the 5 years?
What's that? I'm sorry?
What's your envisionment after the 5 years? Are you looking to get preferential treatment as far as permits are concerned, or are the permits going to be dealt with the same way?
The way the sports clubs work in Abington, I don't think it's necessarily preferential treatment. I think it's, we've been playing on that field, we apply for the permits, we get the permits. GYAC applies for Weldon, if I wanted to use Weldon, I would call, them up and say, hey, can I borrow that for Jack Walsh? Can I, and this is how it all works. I mean, it's my field and that's it.
So Commissioner Klein, maybe this will help too.
Sure.
So the way we historically have permitted the fields is we've always given the field permit to the existing field user. So historically, Hunter, for Pembroke's sake, they always have first right of refusal, let's say, for their permit. And they always get it. Roslyn Boys and Girls, Roslyn Park.
But they should only get them if they're using the fields, and I'm not suggesting that Hunter's not using the
I
fields.
think that's a great point.
And
But I think
agree.
they should only get them, and there has been a problem in the township where fields have been permitted and have not been used and have not been allowed to allow other people to use them because they hold permits to those fields. And that has been rampant through the township, and the athletic clubs have complained about it in the past.
Yeah, and we fight that all the time, and we have started to see
And
more.
we shouldn't be giving permits to those people, to those groups that do that.
So when we give a permit out, we deal with an organization, and I'm just going to use Hunter with 200 or 20 teams. So we give them a permit. We don't have the schedule for each one of their 20 teams. So we give the permit to the organization, and then they disseminate it between all their clubs. Now, are you right that they might say we need the permit Tuesday and Thursday from 5 to 7 or from noon to 7 every night? Because between those 20 teams, they're trying to schedule practices, makeups, games, and things like that. So we don't get, at the Parks Department, we don't get their individual schedules for every team. And yes, sometimes there's a field that they had permitted for that hour or something, and the field might be empty. We have organizations now that are calling each other and saying, hey, I'm really looking for a field. Hey, we're not on it. You guys can come over. Or if it's not, and I'm not saying, I know that there's been teams that have been choosing
It was a
people
problem, and it was actually a contentious problem with your predecessor, because there was no accountability for when those time slots were open, and the township didn't follow up on them, and these athletic clubs basically had these fields under their control without any checks and balances. So if they had periods of time, the permits should have been taken away from them so that those could have been opened up again. And I know this is getting far afield of what you guys are proposing, but the point I'm trying to make is the permitting of this field can't be held hostage because Hunter has put the field in, especially after the 5-year period of time.
And I've seen in that park in particular, in the summer especially, when we're out there a lot, during the day when they're not playing, I see kids out there playing on that field now.
Right, which is why I asked the question. I don't want to see the field locked up like Memorial Field is locked up.
I hear what you, but like I said.
I have no problem with it not
Understand.
being locked up.
I appreciate that.
I mean, and I sat with Doug 5 years ago and said, it's a numbers, it's very simple about the permits, it's a numbers. You know, your club has this many, you need this many fields. Your club has this many, you need this many fields. I mean, it's just a math problem. You have this many people. So I'm all for what you're saying. I'm just trying, I'm not saying it's our field, I'm just saying.
I understand.
History has told us that.
And the other problem in Abington is, unfortunately, we only have so many fields. I mean, we're not getting
Which is
any
more of the reason why if somebody's not using a field, they should be stripped of the permit.
Well, yeah. But, you know, and that's something that we would want in there, is that during those times, like during the day, no one's, I want to see kids out there playing pickup. You know, they're coming by and they're doing it.
Absolutely.
And again, that's where we just monitor while we're there, to make sure that they're playing soccer, they're not riding bikes or, you know, whatever.
Well, I'd be interested in seeing how somebody envisions a lease agreement of this sort. You know, the idea, I know there's been a lot of problems with fields, most of the townships, and we've dealt with it in the County Planning Commission and talked about it. It's a rampant problem throughout the eastern, especially the eastern part of Montgomery County, where fields are scarce, fields are in bad condition, and you are starting to see a trend like you had spoken about where Upper Dublin, Springfield have all started putting in these turf fields. So I like the idea. I just want to see what the details are in the lease agreement, and I'm very concerned about, I want to make sure that the field is left open to the public.
And
I'm all for that.
I appreciate that.
Of that. So I have no problem with that.
But overuse is the biggest problem with fields in the area now. That's why you can't.
We're going to go with Commissioner Gillespie, Commissioner Bowman, then back to Commissioner Croswell. Very, very briefly, I have to say I concur. I have heard similar complaints as Commissioner Klein's, and I think it is important to make sure that there isn't this notion of if you're not using it, you're not subleasing it to anybody. It's got some downtime that like a couple of kids who want to kick a ball around or have a catch aren't going to be chased off of there, and there isn't this sense of of its sort of automatic squatters' rights. Anybody walks near there, out come the dogs and the snipers and the old man yelling, "Hey, you kids, get off my turf." Commissioner Gillespie.
Thank you. One of my questions was basically answered. You mentioned GYAC and that they used it for, they can use it too. And my children, all three of them, did play Hunter soccer, and it is a great league. I'd have to say that. You say the warranty is like 10 to 15 years, something like?
The warranty, depending on the product selected, ranges from 8 years to 10 years. We're one of the only companies in the industry that's offering an extended warranty above the industry average, which is 8, which is on one of our specific products. Our more soccer-centric products are geared towards 8-year warranties. In reference to kind of a double question, a double answer to that is that previously was mentioned that there were signs up that said stay off the grass, or we just put this or that. One of the biggest benefits is with a synthetic field, you're not out there saying, oh, well, somebody just aerated the field, or somebody just seeded it, or somebody just did this. So the accessibility and access to the public, especially with a warranty that is well-written and wide in scope, I think that it can accommodate all aspects of what you're looking for.
So my question is, though, when the warranty's up, and maybe how long does this really last?
We've seen fields last in excess of 14 years.
And then what?
So what ends up
You
happening?
peel it up? I mean, I don't get it at all.
I can. Well,
Do you
we can
roll it
provi-
up and?
we can provide you with a time-lapse video that actually shows a full-blown replacement project, so you can actually see it from start to finish, which I think is useful, and we can provide that via any sort of FTP site or Dropbox file. It's 6 minutes, it's entertaining. What does end up happening is basically our crews will go in, and they will cut 7.5 by 50-foot strips of the field up. They will take a specialized piece of equipment that rolls those rolls up. What ends up usually happening with those rolls is they get relocated to various township areas where there's batting cages, youth organizations that couldn't afford a new turf field that might want to use it as a strength training area or a practice area. There's a lot of value added associated to the community when a replacement project does happen. Usually the schools take them. There's all various things. When it comes to the cost associated to it, we've now removed the surface. We still have the concrete curb, we still have the stone drainage base, and all of that is there. When you go to do a replacement, you also, none of the entities in PA require permitting associated with a replacement. It's a very quick and easy process. It usually takes about 14 to 21 days, depending on weather. And we've basically laser grade out the existing stone base, roll and compact it, and then we come and put a new surface in. But the biggest benefit is the big cost was in the stone. So you're coming in with a 50% to 45% of the acquisition cost originally to replace that product, and then starting the warranty all over again. So it's not as expensive later down the line. The real barrier to entry is the time that it takes to get through the permitting and approval process, as well as building the stone base and getting everything situated.
Well, excuse me, who would then, when this happens, who's going to pay for it to be replaced?
So one of the things that we've seen with a lot of these entities and the various leaseholders, like we just did a replacement for Avon Grove Area School District, we replaced all 3 of their fields. So they're 2 multi-sport fields, which is 168,000 square feet inside of a fence, and then as well their stadium field. What they've looked at is later down the line, creating revenue generating sources that go into slush funds associated to that specific entity, or it could be a lease renewal, depending on.
But that would mean then it's falling on us? Does that mean it's falling?
Well, look, the way I envision this is that we have a reputation of being there, so we're probably going to have we'll be stepping up to the plate again. Just like we've stepped up to the plate for the last 10 years, putting new sod and new grass every other year down. I mean, I talked about we sodded it twice. Prior to that, we reseeded it. We brought in, 100 yards of soil and reseeded it many times. So I don't see us stopping contributing to the township park. I mean, that's what we feel responsible. We're the ones that use it the most. We feel we're responsible for that. The other thing is, the field is being used. He's talking about 10 years. There's pieces, in soccer, the goal mound gets beat up the most. There's certain areas that get beat up. So the life of this will be a lot longer. This isn't like a high school type field. This is, ages 3 to 11. So it's going to get I don't want to say that, but I think it's going to get a longer life than it is. So, and I think that burden would fall on the club that's using it the most. I'd be happy to say that we would do it.
So this warranty also, so if, say, I know you've been there forever, but if you weren't, that transfers to the next, whether it be the township or the warranty's just a warranty for whoever, right?
Right. Well, but you're adding some value to your township that's no other. I mean, and the maintenance that you're saving. You're no longer cutting this grass. You're no longer doing all of that. So if you have 10 years of that, there is a savings there.
Okay, thanks.
Commissioner Carswell and then Commissioner Thompson.
Just to clarify, Commissioner Gillespie asked about if the warranty transfers. So I am not wishing this at all, but let's say Hunter is not there in year 2 or year 3 of the warranty. Does it transfer to the township? Is it possible that the township would then have that warranty to back up the field?
So which is completely with the legalese and the attorneys and how that all gets structured with your lease arrangement, who holds the warranty from its origination doesn't really matter. It's in reference to the surface. So if the township holds the warranty or Hunter holds the warranty, our obligation is to the surface, not specifically the holder of the warranty. So how you structure that from a legalese perspective makes it, I think, a lot easier just to. So.
I disagree in its entirety.
Commissioner Croswell, are you done? Are you finished? All right, Commissioner Thompson and then Commissioner Brodsky, or Commissioner Thompson?
I have a few questions. I guess my first one's for Manager Manfredi. Is there a precedent for this? Is there a precedent for a private sports club purchasing turf and putting it on public land, even locally or elsewhere?
The one that comes to my mind immediately, and Solicitor Clark can speak even to greater detail, is Plymouth Township has a public park where Villanova University has their baseball field, which is completely maintained, constructed, maintained by Villanova University. I know that there are other places where this is happening. Negotiated one in one of my previous locations, but couldn't agree on terms. So it is possible to be done. I don't know if you want to talk to it at all, but so yes, it has been done and can it be done? Yes, it's just whether or not the terms work.
Okay. And then the warranty itself, does it just cover the material or does it cover labor and material?
Labor, material, and installation.
So you would actually come out and make the repair yourself?
Correct.
Okay.
So like if you ask any of our school district clients if they have any support questions or concerns, our biggest thing is being actively involved with our customers. So if, somebody that's maintaining the field and handling, the maintenance or anything like that, we want to actively be training them. Sometimes ground staff turns over, all of those things happen, and they might not know how to utilize a specialized piece of equipment that we want to show them how to utilize. Okay. So, and one of the other examples of a facility that's got a public-private partnership is Westchester United Soccer Club with the Kelly Sports Complex with Westchester, I think it's Westtown Township. All of the youth organizations, regardless of the sport, have a long-term lease partnership with the township. So we actually just replaced their soccer field this past summer.
Okay. And I know we're kind of getting late into the night and I'm opening up a can of worms, but can you talk a little bit the stormwater management of the field, what the intent is for that?
The biggest thing is having an engineer, green light everything and work, not only our private engineer who will be a licensed PE, but working with the township engineers and working through that process. In reference to the land development item in which that you raised at the beginning of this. So we had our engineers look at the township codes, and as it's written, it doesn't state that this would fall under that. Now, there are townships out there that can force something like this through land development, but it's not commonly done. So typically with a facility like this, it's just your flat surface, you're not changing any traffic patterns, you're not looking at something that would be considered a land development item. From a stormwater perspective, we've got a stone drainage base with a piping system around the perimeter and a flat panel drain designed to move some of that water around through the base and allow it to percolate through the soil and tie into any existing systems. But to speak to exactly how that base is going to work, it is a case-by-case scenario that is really guided by the township engineer. So when we propose these systems, they're based off of average case scenarios of what we see that township engineers approve. And there's always a little guidance, instead of using a 90-degree bend, they might require a 45-degree bend. And I could, go through your stormwater proposal pretty much all over again. Same concept. The biggest benefit is that these fields will move water through them instead of sheeting them off into neighbors' yards and doing all sorts of different things. So like the biggest concern when somebody's looking at an athletic field, they're like runoff coefficients. So runoff coefficients of turf, it's not a parking lot. It's not just sheeting across. It's going down. So our surfaces are capable of infiltrating in excess of 40 inches an hour. So what you throw at it, it takes instead of redistributes elsewhere. And I think that covers it.
So the rubber mat's actually a pervious surface?
So basically the turf, it goes through the turf, through the heat-punched porous drainage holes, into the stone system, into the piping system, very much like the stormwater example that we saw earlier in the night.
Okay.
So.
Did you guys want to respond to the saldo requirement?
I think the solicitor already answered that question. While it may be, and you and I have talked about this, it may be common elsewhere for it not to go through land development, but the language in our saldo, the interpretation of the solicitor is that it would be a land development, therefore, that's the only opinion that matters.
Okay.
Commissioner Thompson, you done?
I'm done.
All right, any other questions or comments from commissioners? All right, I'm going to open this up to public comment, and then we'll kind of figure out how we're going to go from here. So any comments from the audience? All right. So I guess I know, there's some materials that we're waiting for, but I'd like to kind of take the pulse of the committee and also Commissioner Thompson, because again, this is a very significant feature in the ward he represents. Basically, I'm thinking we could sort of go two ways. We could make a motion and pass it, or I could make a motion to move this through without recommendation, and obviously we're going to have more to consider next week. Thoughts from the committee? Commissioner Bowman?
Well, I'm still for it. Nobody else uses that field. It's used by Hunter now. They're not asking for, I thought Commissioner Klein's points were well spoken, and I like the response. So if kids can still jump on there on the odd Sunday and they're not restricting it, makes sense. I golf, and we certainly suffered from the rain, and I'm sure soccer, baseball last year. It was just a tough year, and you see in the paper, CB West is now doing their fields. Two or three fields CB West is going to do in turf, and I think you're going to see more and more, like you said, so I do support it. And I'd vote for a motion tonight to support it.
Okay. Thoughts, Commissioner DiPlacido?
So we've had an opportunity to consider and discuss, but I feel that there are many more questions that need to be answered. I think this, I like the idea of the field, but Commissioner Carswell, she brought up some great points. So did Commissioner Klein, and I'm not ready to pass this tonight without some more information for leasing and the other things that we spoke of earlier. And I think it's way too late to go over all that right now.
Although I think I would recommend then, if not here, then maybe afterwards, definitely let the folks from Hunter know, because obviously you guys, there's a lot of research, a lot of homework that a bunch of people are going to be doing this week. Any other thoughts from the committee? Commissioner Myers?
I absolutely tend to support it. There are details that need to be laid out in the leasing area. I think the idea of what you're doing to the field with the turf is great. And I think this is a lawyer thing about working out the agreement between the township and Hunter, and to cover all of that ground.
Commissioner Schreiber, anything? Commissioner Thompson?
I agree. I'm generally in favor of this proposal. I don't think I'm ready to see anybody vote on this tonight. I think it'd be prudent to wait until we have at least a draft of an agreement, so that we really know what we're getting ourselves into and what we're committing to. But generally, I think this is a good proposal.
All right. I don't see any harm in making a motion. Commissioner Klein, sorry.
I would suggest that the committee makes a motion to instruct the manager's office and the solicitor to work with Hunter in drafting up at least an outline of an agreement, so that can be brought back to the board for consideration.
I think that is an apt suggestion.
And I know that Hunter is really looking for an answer next week, but I think there's a lot of issues that have to be discussed with them.
Yeah.
That this is most likely a June issue, not a May 9th issue. So I would, frankly, and then the whole land development process, if we believe we could get something to all the questions, but I know there are questions that have been asked of me related to this. For example, how does this fit into our overarching plan?
Right.
So, there's questions that have to be answered, so we may not be able to have you a draft agreement by the 9th. And if we can't have a draft agreement by the 9th, I'd like the authorization to push it to June if possible.
That's certainly fine by me. Commissioner Myers.
I think I heard that really what you wanted tonight was just an indication. Should you go forward or does it die here? And I think you're getting your answer that you should go forward.
Yeah, I agree, and I appreciate everybody. Thank you very much. And as far as the lease and all of that, I don't see any issues with that because we're saying whatever you write is going to work, you know? So I don't have an issue with that. We hold the permits, so I see this as a good ending.
All right. Honestly, I don't think we need to take any action then. I mean, there is no motion on the table currently. I think we discussed this. I think we're going to have a lot more information. And I think you do have an indication. I mean, I think there is a lot of support. All right, motion to table. Moved and seconded to table to a future date that we will determine when we have enough information. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Tabled. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
And now, public comment in the purview of public affairs. Name and address in 3 minutes. We're almost done. It's 10:40. Do you know where my children are? My child is. She's studying. Hope she's studying. 3 minutes.
Laura Lehman, 1431 Bryant Lane. So the first thing that I want to do is...
Phone interruption.
Lydia.
The clock's running, it's all right.
Okay.
Clock's running, I said.
I wanted you to enjoy some of what's on your channel, the classical music, okay? This is somebody's idea of classical music.
Spiegelman, might I suggest that we just close the meeting?
We got 2 minutes left.
I don't know if this is annoying while we talk, but it's certainly...
No, this is...
In my house, it's...
You know what, here's the thing. Burn all the time you want. You're saying far more about yourself and your presentation than you are about literally anything else.
I will just tell you that this is the music that is considered classical music. That is...
Well, you know what? One person's... Classical is a kind of a culturally loaded term. A lot of different things can be classical.
And that is actually why they invented elevator music, because it offends almost no one. It's played low, it's very soft, and it is not something that is intended to offend. But what is on our channel is actually intended to drive people away from watching it. So that's number one. But you know, your job as chairman, Mr. Spiegelman, your job as chairman is not to argue with people.
Somebody wrote that music, and
Commissioner Spiegelman, the rules of order do not require that the chair argue with the person that they are supposed to put forward.
I'm a discreet chair.
Yeah,
so I'm using my discretion.
Thank you for following the rules of order. That's number one. Number two, as you can see here, I'd like to know your explanation. First, Mr. Manfredi said he had to have the people close to him. Clearly, that's not true. He's pushed them as far back as he can. Second, he said Commissioner Luker wanted it. So between yourself and Commissioner Luker, the only thing that was accomplished here is that the only seat that works for filming and having a plug and so on in that corner was refused to a resident who has been for 13 years giving their time in order to do things for this township that are not being done. So I would like to know your reason why you think this is okay.
I have no reason. I'm
I'm
not part of this conversation. I'm listening.
Is it okay with you?
It's the manager's discretion. That's completely okay with me.
And is it okay with you that you have a manager whose intent is to take away the ability to gather information, to share it with others in the township? Instead of
see
to
that that's-
accommodate that?
I don't see that that's the case. By the way, your 3 minutes have expired, and I don't see that that's the case at all.
Okay,
I
so-
think we just have a fundamental disagreement, fundamental difference of opinion.
This isn't a difference of opinion. This is the only place that works between the hearing, the visibility. This has taken away the visibility from the speakers over here. There is absolutely no reason for this except either A, vindictiveness, or two, an attempt to keep information away from residents, which the music also accomplishes. So the second thing that I'd like to say is that I mentioned earlier that having no place to report wrongdoing. When, you know, I told you that you had an employee who interfered with...
Your extra minute has expired.
Who interfered with an investigation?
20 more seconds.
This is pretty important stuff.
20 more
And you just
seconds.
had a solicitor who tried to
The DA's
interfere
number.
with that
There's a district
investigation
attorney.
again.
Call the DA.
So I actually would like to see, in your bailiwick, in your basket,
Wait for
is
it.
the place where this is supposed to be handled, where residents
Your
have a
time and
place
extra time have
to deal
expired.
with
Thank
these
you.
things. I hope the whole world is watching this. And by the
Oh,
way,
I absolutely hope the whole world is
those who
watching.
have your emails,
I know what
please
music
get
I'm
them
listening to
me.
tonight. The Public Affairs Committee is adjourned, and I just want to say thanks again, EAC, Shade Tree. I'd like to end on a positive note, a positive and accurate, true, uplifting note. The work you guys do is enhances life in this township incredibly. Thank you. Happy May.